Oh my god, this is ridiculous.
Brad, you're walking on water. You are Beer Jesus.
I'm the Beer Jesus. I just want to say, this is probably one of the best experiences of my life.
For the last 7 years, Brad and I have been travelling the world hunting down the best breweries and beers, as well as searching out the most amazing places to enjoy them.
Drink it in!
We've met homebrewers in the Arctic to help judge at their beer competitions. We've witnessed the pure insanity of China's own Oktoberfest. We've got lost deep inside the mazes that make up Czechia's lager cellars. We've travelled halfway around the globe just to taste the best IPAs fresh at source, and lots more besides. These adventures have taught us amazing things about beer, brewing, people and the environment, and how they all come together to create a culture we've fallen in love with. So join us as we explore the world through the medium of beer. Meeting master brewers, digging into beer history, brewing collaborations, and trying to act sober against all the odds. Through our travel documentaries, beer school episodes and sofa sessions, we'll teach you everything you need to know to enjoy beer at its best, and to appreciate the wonder that is the world's favourite alcoholic drink. We're here to show you that at the end of a long day, all you need is love and beer. Welcome to the Craft Beer Channel. Welcome everybody to the Keep Cask Alive live show. It was about 10 seconds into that little intro video that I realised I forgot to change that intro to the Keep Cask Alive one. So we're starting as we mean to go on, because this has already been the most chaotic live show we've ever done, and it's only set to get more chaotic for reasons that will be explained shortly. But we do have some delicious beers to be tucking into. We do have some delicious stories to be giving you the background of, and we of course have a highly esteemed guest who I'm very excited to give a full 2 hours attention to instead of the measly 10 minutes he did get in Keep Cask Alive. But never fret, there will be a full episode on Kirkstall to come. How are we feeling, Bradley? You ready for this one?
Pretty good, man. Yeah, I've got my my love and beer. Of course, we've just had love and beer at the end of the intro there, and I've got my Keep Cask Alive. Oh, I'm back.
Sorry, I'm booked around trying to get my hat.
Oh, look at that. We're like twins, except I'm a lot bit grayer than you. Very patchy.
Area.
I think the hat fits you better. It's more of a
Child size.
No, it's not. It's actually a normal size. I've just got a giant head. But I'm feeling good, Journey. Just come back from the Isle of Wight. Drunk some lovely cask ale from a double-decker bus out there, which was unexpected, delightful, well kept somehow. The guy had a sort of jacket that was keeping it at the correct temperature, and he said whatever he didn't sell after 2 days, he chucked. So he really did respect the cask, which was pretty amazing. Yeah, it was good.
I'm not sure the cardigan and...
Oh, no, you don't need to. Just to know you've got one's good. These are still available, I believe, to purchase.
Absolutely, and we've actually just had to top up our stock of these, Bradley.
Have we really? Are we out already? Or have we just sold like certain sizes? Or
no, not out of all of them. We still got some mediums left, but the other ones are pretty much gone. So I had to do a little top up. So Keep Cask Alive t-shirts are flying out in our new soft as a cloud, soft as a New England IPA t-shirt stock.
Like a sort of
in the world.
Yeah, it's definitely less scratchy. I don't know.
Yes.
I feel like I could. It's like a sort of It's good quality. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Good pitch. Just keep rubbing yourself. That'll sell them.
Yeah.
Right. So welcome to the first live stream actually of 2025 from the Craft Beer Channel, which is a bit sad. Oh, there goes the glycol chiller. We're see, as soon as the homebrew starts, you're all asking for homebrew, and then I spend my life turning the glycol chiller on and off. But Yes, welcome to the first live show of the year. We obviously have some house rules. The first one is have fun. The second one is please do introduce yourself in the chat because we'd love to know where you are in the world and what you are drinking. And then we have some, what's the word? Formalities? Is that the right word?
Yeah, I guess so.
The first one is sign the fucking petition. That's a
Please.
formality.
Please.
If you haven't, it's at tinyurl.com/save cask. And we do, in fact, have a live ticker going on tonight, folks. So we're going to hopefully watch that a bit like Children in Need or something.
Yeah. I was thinking it in my head, but I thought I won't say it. But yeah, it's like a charity-a-thon.
Yeah.
We're trying to save beer.
I am slightly distressed that since I set that up, it hasn't actually moved. So if somebody
a refresh, buddy. Have you given it a refresh? Do it a little cheeky refresh.
You want me to refresh it?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. It's had quite a lot of signatures since I last checked. There we go. It should just keep ticking along. Don't know what that's about. Anywho, what are the other things? So the first thing to say is that you can support our channel and make sure that you cut through the noise in the chat and get your question answered or just show your love and support to the channel by using Super Chat, which is up at the top of the chat section. All you have to do is give a couple of quid, which goes straight to running the channel and indeed to this campaign. And we will answer your question or give you a shout out at the very next opportunity that we get. So you can use that at any point in the show, but we will have a Q&A right at the end of the show. If you do have some burning questions, feel free. If you've been asking in the chat and we haven't managed to get to it until that point, just ask it again. That's not a problem at all. You can also join our Discord where there's often a little after party and indeed some chat during the show going on. Our Discord is the friendliest, loveliest place, I think, on the internet, maybe. And it's got a great homebrew forum as well if you are into homebrew. So you can chat about beer and indeed chat about brewing, and that starts at £2 a month, and that goes straight to the channel as well. So far, so normal. I'm going to get everybody else drinking before we talk about the next thing. So where's my drinking order gone? This is the drinking order for this evening. So we're going in with Judicious. We're going to have 3 swords when Chris joins us. Then we've got Vitruous, as I've written.
Virtuous, yeah.
Virtuous, Flamingo, and then Spokane, I believe it's pronounced, although I've already in the green room said Spokane, Spokane, all the variations, but I believe it's Spokane. So that is the drinking order. So please do feel free to open your judicious beers judiciously. Brad, you can open that, and I'm going to explain why this is going to be pure liquid chaos this evening. So on my road this week, they had to do some emergency repairs, which seems to have stopped DHL going the final 10 meters to my house. So I did not receive the beers. And despite Chris's best efforts, they didn't arrive in time for the show. So we have a new format specifically for me. Chris and Brad will be drinking the delicious beers along with you, and I will be drinking exactly what you tell me to drink. So anybody that's done one of the Drink Jonny Dry live shows will know how this is going to work. But essentially, I've put together a list of beers from my stash that I want to get rid of, that I want to taste, that need to make room for more beer. And I've put them in a Google form. And so throughout tonight, you are going to be voting on what beers I'm going to be drinking. And you can do that by going again to tinyurl.com/Drink Jonny Dry 2. It's actually the third one we've done, but Drink Jonny Dry 2. And there you will find a form with, how many beers are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different beers. I'm only going to be drinking 4 or 5 of them. But I would love it if you could go to that link, save it once you're there, and every time you refresh it, every time we get to a new round, it will be updated and you can vote again. But go to that link, vote on what you want me to drink from that list, and I will duly do so. They are all chilling in the brew fridge next to me. So, yeah, I'm going to give that. We've already had 2 votes in. I'm going to give that a couple of minutes before I get to crack open my first beer. But that is the link, tinyurl.com/Drink Jonny Dry 2. If you need any links, just ask in the chat. I can copy and paste it and stuff. In fact, should I copy and paste it in there now and then people can...
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'll do that while Brad gives a shout out.
We've had a bloody. Oh, you've already put it up on screen. You've already put it up on screen. I had my hand hovering on the button, Johnny. This is the problem with giving Brad the power. Thomas Thompson, what a cracking name, sir. No question, just good luck. That is an incredibly lovely gesture.
Takes on a
Straight out
passive
the
aggressive
gates.
note, though, knowing what we've got to get through.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
yeah,
that.
Johnny. I think this might be liquid chaos, Johnny, because people could choose to be cruel, they could choose to be kind, they could just choose to really mess with you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. What
I mean,
are you fearing? Maybe you could tell us what you're fearing the most out of all of the beers.
Well, there's essentially 3 barley wines on there, and I'm fearing that the first 3 rounds are the 3 barley wines, essentially.
I think for just if I could just put like an adult warning sticker on things, maybe don't select all 3 barley wines for Johnny straight out the gates, because we want to have a sort of a proper discussion about Keep Cask Alive 2 a little bit, right? Before you get well, you're not going to get doolally anyway. I trust you.
No. That would never happen on one of our live shows.
No.
Surely not.
No.
Right, we've got 12 responses. I'm going to wait for 20, and then we're going to cast the vote. So I think that while we wait for those final ones to come in, let us know in the comments what you think of Judicious. Bradley, what do you think of it? And then we'll get Chris on to see if he agrees.
I think it's very delicious. First of all, it's an absolute juice bomb. So it's this juicy pale ale by name, and I believe it certainly is a juicy pale ale. It's giving me strong tropical lilt vibes. I would have to say. So I look like a lobster. I've taken some photos while I've been away. I look incredibly pink. I think I've caught the sun, Johnny. I felt like I've come from a tropical place and I've come back to Catford, and the first can I've cracked is taking me back to the tropics, mate. I'm getting, like, as it says, I do get pineapple and grapefruit on here. It's talking about mango, passion fruit, peach. I'm not a massive fan of peach, but maybe there is a little bit of that kind of, I don't know, I always find peach a little bit almondy or something. There's something a bit weird about peach to my brain. But I'm not getting loads of that, but I'm getting lots
on
of
the cyanide in the stone that tastes
it
like...
could be that. Yeah. It could be that.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But it's absolutely delicious, super crushable. I'm glad it's in a big can because I think this is a judicious drink for summer park drinking, Johnny.
Okay.
Over ice. Well, not over ice, but in a cool box for sure. Absolutely delicious. Cheers, everyone, by the way. Love and beer.
Right. We're at 20 votes, but there's currently a 2-way tie. So we're going to bring Chris on and hopefully somebody will step up and resolve that tie for us.
Or maybe me and Chris should get a vote as well.
Well, you can go to the link, Bradley.
Oh, you want me to physically go to the link? Okay.
Oh, right. Oh, you want to have the casting vote? Okay.
Maybe.
Well, let's get Chris on, and then
I'll
let you guys have the casting vote. Right. So yeah, we're very honoured to be joined by Chris Hall. Chris Hall is somebody I've known for a long time. I only met him through the beer industry. There was a legendary trip to a great pub in the Suffolk countryside, which I think was when I first met him, and it was all back when beer blogging and beer geekery was a small concern and niche and innocent. There was us. There was Steve from the Beer O'Clock Show. A guy called Ed Razzle, who I don't even know what he does, works in Europe at a brewery now, who hosted us. Lots of people who I've known for a very long time now, and I've always loved Chris Hall's writing. But I didn't know a huge amount about what he was up to at Kirkstall when he joined them. And I have to say, of all the revelations we've had on Keep Cask Alive, I think Kirkstall is the biggest revelation. So Chris is one of the main reasons I wanted to do Kirkstall for this live show, but also I want to talk in depth about Kirkstall and what they're up to as well, because I think they're one of the most exciting breweries in the country, in part for the beer, but also for the incredible stuff that they're doing with their pubs, with their festivals and that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to change this to that and bring on Chris Hall. How are we doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, it's an absolute honor. The hardest edit I had to do was condensing down our conversation in those big plush chairs at the Tetley.
Yeah, never mind the absolute barrage of info you must have got from Steve on your tour, I'm sure.
Yes, I mean, that tour that Brad did, that in the edit is about 7 or 8 minutes long, I think. That was an hour and a half tour at least. So I don't know what I'm going to do when it comes to the full Kirkstall episode. Maybe people are always
Oh,
asking
man,
for
you just need
Patreon
to-
exclusive content.
Should they release that Snyder cut? Do the full uncut version of the Turley tour.
Maybe I will. Right, Chris, just before we dig into everything and dig into that beer, the two-way tie that we have, and I'm going to let you resolve it. We have Northern Monk and their collab with White Locks, which is a Scotch ale with UK Cascade, tied with Landlord Dark. What would you rather see me drink?
Okay. The other one? Landlord
did you-
Dark. Well, I have to admit, for transparency, that I've already voted for Landlord Dark.
Okay.
Does that go to me then?
But I'm happy with either choice because you did get that. I think you got that can of the Northern Monk beer when you came up to film at the Tetley. I think you were gifted it then. So either feels appropriate to me. Landlord Dark because we were in the video together with them as guys. Or the Northern Monk beer because you got that at White Locks. When I was, I hastened to add helping to film at that point.
Credits to Chris. I think that's too good an endorsement. I should drink that beer, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I believe you should
appropriate.
drink the Timmy's, mate. Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
You guys have a chat about Judicious, and I'll grab that beer.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So, Chris,
so
tell me about Judicious. Did you come up with a lot of this? Is this Chris's doing?
No, so this is, I think this was first released as a seasonal shortly before I'd started at Kirkstall. And unlike a lot of Kirkstall recipes, it has a slightly more interesting and unusual origin. And that is because the label was designed before the recipe.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
the fun fact about most of the illustration work that you will see on our can designs. We have an in-house designer, James Wright, who helps me with so many things, and he is by trade a graphic designer, so he's very much the layouts and the lockups and all that kind of stuff. But the illustration is actually done by another designer whose name is Jess Holt, because she is Steve's daughter.
Oh, wow.
Jess used to work for Paper Chase, and she used to design like wallpapers and all kinds of stuff. A lot of her work is quite heavily influenced by arts and craft movement, and she also has her own line in like festival wear. So if you can imagine these kind of designs on full wraparound, like all over print t-shirts, leggings, like crazy hats and all this kind of stuff. She does all of that kind of thing. So Jess had Steve had asked his daughter to come up with a label for a beer. And then he took that label into the brewery and tasked the brewers with, can you make a beer that tastes like this looks, basically.
Wow.
And that was the brief thing. He was he's always had a really keen eye for trends, and he knew that Kirkstall was going to need a core hazy pale, a juicy pale to basically to give people what they want. That's very much a key guiding influence in what we do. Whilst we are brewers who love making the things that we love to drink, like every brewery under the sun, Steve is very, very keen on giving people what they want and having the most inclusive as well as diverse range of beers possible. So this hazy pale uses Citra Mosaic, Simcoe, Galaxy, and Talus. So Talus being the perhaps more sort of restrained sibling to Sabro is how a lot of people think of Talus. It's got more pronounced pink grapefruit notes than the coconut stuff that people can be a bit Marmite over, I suppose. But I think you still get a nice little hint of the coconut there, which meets those other tropical flavors that you identified head on. It's got as you say, I call this kind of like rooftop holiday cocktail. Like it evokes a kind of certain kind of feeling of relaxation and the tropics to me for sure. And yeah, I love drinking it. So yeah, cheers to you all.
Cheers.
Talus. Cheers. Yeah, Talus is quite a controversial hop. A lot of people can't stand it, but I can't see anybody. Either people aren't picking up on it too much because it's nice and subtle, or they're picking up, the grapefruit as Andrew is here.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of talk about grapefruit, which could also be the Galaxy as well, of course.
Yeah, and I think Tallis is a little bit like Sabro in the sense that a little goes a long way, and I think perhaps some breweries have erred in the past in going kind of like quite heavily in on it, and like its other forebear, Sriracha Ace. Once upon a time, that had a similar reputation for if it was an all-out Sriracha fest, then it was love it or hate it. But I think a little bit of Tallis goes a long way to kind of almost season those other kind of like hop flavors and add a little nice little accents to the other stuff that comes through. But the main thing for me is that it's just really, really accessible. The glassware that we have for Judicious, Jess managed to replicate a lot of these elements from the can onto a 360 printed shorter SW glass that you'll see in our pubs, and you can buy those online, but unfortunately we can't ship glass really. So if you want to see it in the flesh, I encourage you to come to Leeds, come to a Kirkstall pub to get the full experience of drinking it out of a Judy glass.
Love it.
Just go to Leeds, really. Not even just for the glassware. I think I've fallen in love
Come
with
to
this.
the glassware, stay for the beer that's in it. Yeah, sure.
Cool, right. Well, so there might be some people who aren't aware of sort of who you are and what you do, both at Kirkstall and what you did before. Can you give us a little spiel as to who you are, so that when we get exceptionally geeky about beer history, people have context?
Yeah, sure. So I've so I worked in the beer industry in sales, marketing, and events roles for about 10 years now. I first worked for Brew by Numbers in Bermondsey on the infamous Bermondsey Beer Mile during the big growth phase of that kind of like that trend, that phenomenon. Brew by Numbers had a huge variety of beer, and that was one of the main reasons that I loved working for them. I then went to work in more like import and distribution for the Bottle Shop, who also had a bar in Bermondsey, but had just built a huge like refrigerated warehouse in Canning Town, and they were huge exponents of cold chain, particularly imported amazing American beers, but were also carrying the likes of Omnipollo and a lot of the flavor of the month type stuff at that time. And I worked for them for about 1.5 years, but sadly the Bottle Shop went down the tubes for various reasons. But after that, I ummed and ahed over whether I would go back to a brewery or to do something new. And then I found an amazing job at Howling Hops over in Hackney Wick. They had a really unique concept with a tank bar, which you guys, some of you watching may have visited before. It's a really cool way to experience fresh beer, like, that travels about that far from the brew house to the serving vessels themselves. And they had amazing pubs in the form of the Southampton Arms, which I used to live near once upon a time, and obviously you guys know really well, and also the Cock Tavern. I worked for them for 3 years, but the long-term plan was ultimately to move back north because I actually studied in Leeds and had lived there for a few years after. So when I did, my experience of trying to find a beer job was a little bit harder. Obviously, there's still heaps and heaps of breweries up here in West Yorkshire, but not as many as you might think in Leeds itself. And not everybody was in a position just on the other side of the pandemic to offer the kind of job I was looking for. So I talked to some people, things weren't really looking like the way I wanted to. And until it was a little bit like online dating, essentially. I'd looked around, not found what I wanted, and then I just had to put myself out there. So I literally just tweeted that I'm moving to Leeds. I'd like to work in beer. If anybody knows anything that comes up, please let me know. And the next day I got a call from John Kelly at Kirkstall, who wanted to talk to me about what they wanted to do in terms of a marketing, which they had not really had full time at all up to that point. And I knew the beers really well. I used to drink them in White Lux and other places in Leeds every time I went back for festivals and work and that sort of stuff. And then when I went to Kirkstall for the first time, I went to that brewery and I saw it from the outside and I was like, yeah, this tracks with what I know about them. It's got the outside has very much got a clean, industrial, almost kind of like American brewery kind of taproom aesthetic. And then I stepped through the front door and I realized what this was actually about. And I still describe it as the crystal maze effect. You start out in the clean cut American taproom zone, and then you travel into the inside of Steve Holt's mind, which is very much the Victorian pub zone. formation and all the story that I heard and all this stuff that I learned afterwards, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Because they had done an amazing job at a grassroots level and at a brewing level, at a technical level, but they never really had somebody dedicated to really telling their story. And there was so much story in there. That first hour they spent there, I was like, I think I've just seen 5 years worth of content already, like in that short amount of time. So yeah, it was pretty much a done deal by that point. But as you mentioned, I've been writing about beer for even longer than that, and I feel like with each job that I've had, I've been able to turn that skill towards what I felt were things that were really important at the time. That variety of beer that I saw at Brew by Numbers, the importance of like technical side of things in terms of cold chain refrigeration and that side of stuff from the bottle shop, and the passion for pubs and great tasting fresh hoppy beer that existed at Howling Hops. And it feels in many ways like coming to Leeds and coming to Kirkstall felt like coming home, not just because I lived in Leeds before, but I felt like there was a brewery here where I was like, I can really stretch my legs and like I can really get into this and have the backing of somebody who is as passionate, even more passionate about pubs and history than I am. So yeah, that's brought me to where I am today, and ultimately going on to being able to organize my own beer festival, which, like most people who organize beer festivals, end up organizing a beer festival that they would really love to go to, but end up having to work the whole thing. So I'm sure you have much to say about it.
We'll dig into that beer festival soon, because I remember we still haven't actually made it to the festival, but I remember when that first opened, I was like, you know, the world doesn't know it needs this, but it definitely does need a festival like this, because it is something that's been sorely missing from the craft beer movement, certainly, but also just, you know, while there have been some fantastic CAMRA festivals through the years, none of them have done a particularly good job about telling the story of British brewing, which, you know, it must have been a dream for you to work into Kirkstall and essentially have that in front of you as somebody whose, you know, passion is writing. And
it wasn't hard to pitch, put it that way, but I was quite nervous about doing it because as you'll understand when you've met Steve and talked with him, his passion isn't just for the past or anything like that. It's very much about authenticity. And my main fear was that he would see me as trying to recreate something here that was like an ersatz version of what this kind of like thing was. But I told him that I basically just had this light bulb moment, and I was like, this is a beer festival that I think needs to exist. And I think we have to accept that in this regard, just this one regard, and particularly in that part of Yorkshire, CAMRA had kind of like dropped the ball a little bit. And I had been told by people at CAMRA afterwards that they were really, really happy for us to take the ball and run with it. In that regard, because they knew that Steve was the perfect like person to back this kind of like project, and that he would do it in a way that will allow it to sort of grow as it needs to over time. At the Tetley screening of that episode, I speak to some local CAMRA organisers who were really keen to be involved in future versions of the festival. So it feels like it's growing and evolving in a way that, for me, is exactly what I wanted to happen. I wanted to feel like it was becoming part of something. I wasn't trying to stamp over anybody else's thing, you know. I have conversations with Northern Monk because obviously Hop City takes place in that same month, and they were like, yeah, they admitted to me privately, it was like, we had thought about something along these lines, but we felt that Dark City was the better kind of foil to what Hop City was. And they were like, and they basically said themselves, like, it needs to be somebody like Kirkstall that does this. And they were just kind of waiting to see what would happen. So they were happy for us to just kind of like lead the charge with it. So yeah, it's now in its third year, and the Great Exhibition of Prize Ales continues to evolve and grow. But what continues to surprise me about it is just how excited and passionate the brewers who we invite are in just like recreating things and these stories and telling those stories over the bar to people. And that's what I really missed from those early those outings to those like pubs that you would travel all day to go to. What missed from those earlier beer festivals where it felt like the enthusiasm, the story was bursting out of the people as they were serving you the beer. Like that's what I wanted to see again. So yeah, it's been like an absolute privilege to do it, and it's also the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Yeah, I mean we can testify to how hard it is to run a beer festival, and ours is on an even smaller scale than yours. Right, I'm conscious that people might be gagging for their second beer, so I flashed up the drinking order there. We're going to be moving on to Three Swords as our next beer. And when I spoke to Chris about what beers we wanted to go into here, I said the only requirement from me is that Three Swords is there. Because I think it's a hugely... Well, it's not even underrated because I think it's such a local beer that it hasn't got out of its space, but it's a truly stunning beer. And it's now one of my favorite sort of blonde hoppy beers that I can be served on cask. And it was in such...
I'm really glad to hear that. Condition. Yeah, I think you're right to say it's...
Slight technical difficulties, I think, there.
You froze for a second there, Chris. Sorry, do you want to say what you said again?
Have you got me back?
You're back.
I lost you guys for a little bit.
You're back in the room.
Yeah, I think you're back. Oh no, we've lost him again.
Oh dear. Should we read out? We've had a super chat, Johnny.
You did a super chat and see if Chris comes back.
Hey yo, yeah, no, this 5 drink list. I got an extra one after Spokane.
Hey, yo, yeah.
Spokane, 5.5 mango IPA. Hope everyone else has. Cheers, Kirky, sending me a bonus one. Thanks for the super chat.
Thank you very much indeed.
Was that? I think did that go out to everyone? I got 6 beers as well. That's super nice. If that was what happened.
Well, I think it was always supposed to be 6, but we're not drinking all 6.
Yeah. But
nice.
I thought
Save our livers.
Yeah.
I thought Doyas Day said he was only supposed to get 5. Is that what? Have I misunderstood what he's saying?
No, I think maybe he's misunderstood what was coming in the box.
Oh right. Well, 6 beers. It's good value, eh?
He's got more beers than he expected, so everybody wins.
We're all winning.
Yeah, Chris, I think you're back. So why don't you? Just before you tell us about Three Swords, I have been told I'm drinking Hook Norton 172 Strong Ale, so I'm going to find that in the fridge.
Chris, I don't think I saw him crack the Timmies. Did you?
It wasn't the Timmies.
Oh, what did you drink? Sorry. I thought we voted on the Timmies.
Yeah. No, we voted for the other one. Keep up, Bradley.
Well, I voted Timmies, so I'm a bit confused. Oh well. I got poo-pooed by the sounds of it. I was too busy.
This one literally has cobwebs on it.
Wow, look at that. Let it focus. Hide your face, Johnny. Hide your shame. Let's see that. Oh yeah, nice. That's got some dustiness right there, isn't it? Wow. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big boy.
Yeah. Gonna give that a quick clean before I pour from this spider webby beer.
Just make you stronger, mate. Give you some superpowers, you know.
Is that how it was? I thought he got bitten by the spider rather than imbibing a strong traditional beer from a Victorian brewery covered in spiders.
There's a whole multiverse of spider people, aren't there? So who's to say that you eating some spider web wouldn't hurt? I don't know. What would you say your superpower is, Johnny?
Tasting beer?
I genuinely think you've got an amazing palate. It's much better than mine. Way better than mine. So I think that you're right. I think that's your superpower.
I would say that when people talk about being great at tasting, most of our tongues are broadly similar. We're capable of the same things. It's having the language to then describe it.
Yeah.
Which is why I think anybody can taste beer really well, because all you have to do is learn to connect your tongue and your brain. So there's no reason to think that you can't taste beer well. You just need to taste more and drink and talk about it more.
Good point.
Is how I sort of look at it. Yeah, sorry, Chris, tell us about Three Swords. Oh dear, we're having some serious technical difficulties.
I think we might have lost Chris.
Chris, I'm going to put some technical advice in the
as far as I know, I am here.
I'm going to put some technical advice in the private chat, Chris. 1 second.
Shall I read the packet while we're waiting to hear from Chris? So this is Three Swords, right? Hundreds of years ago, Kirkstall Abbey used 3 swords on its coat of arms. In the present day, we use 3 American hop varieties, Cascade, Centennial, and Chinook Great Sea hops, to give out extra pale ale its flavors of citrus, pine, and stone fruit. Delightful. Delightful in all regards. Love the name.
When I first tasted it, I wouldn't have immediately said to you it's got American hops in, certainly on cask, because it's got such smooth and really restrained kind of grapefruit and pine character that I thought it could have been either modern UK hops or possibly like UK Cascade or something. But it does, once you know and once you really get to taste it, you recognize all that American character. But it's such a British beer. It just happens to have American hops in, I think, is sort of how I'd kind of describe it. Chris, you're looking smoother and better already. Talk to us. I've got you back.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so Three Swords, as you noted from the label, I've been able to see and hear you perfectly this whole time, and you've just been acting like I would just faded away like Martin McFly in the picture of himself.
Nothing personal.
Fair enough. Yeah, so Three Swords, perhaps lesser well known nationally, but within its heartland of West Yorkshire and beyond that, across the north of England, it's a very well loved beer. It's our biggest single selling cask product, and it's just a sublimely integrated pale ale. I did see somebody in the comments asking what constitutes extra pale ale here. So you may see this term one of 2 ways. You might think of it as it being, is it extra light in color, or is it something that's a pale ale and then some? In this case, it's both, I would say. Bill, try that crisp drinkability of cask golden ales, perhaps. And then that hop character that comes through, as you know, from those 3, it's designed to be restrained. It is also designed to be just really simply quenching. The critical component of this, obviously we're drinking a can of this now, and it's a damn nigh on perfect replication of the cask product. But as we can talk about at great length, because of all the amazing work you guys have done, that last final component is the pub itself. So I was keen to not just make sure that you guys got plenty of lovely footage of Three Swords. Thank you for making that the final shot of the series, by the way. I literally jumped up and shouted when I watched it at home. I was literally watching it at home. I'd seen the video and I started watching it on my phone on the way home, and I was like, no, I'm gonna link it to my TV so I can watch it properly. And and my partner had gone to bed, and the dogs were still up with me, sleeping on the sofa. And I was watching the episode, and I loved everything about it. I think I've got a huge man crush on Norbert now, amongst other things.
Norbert and Jed both got the guy's man crushing hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you build up to, obviously you add in extra narrative and extra drama, which was so exciting. I can't even imagine how stressed you were, but it was incredibly well done. And then you build up to this crescendo of your final pitch, your call to arms, and then you just put Kirkstall hand pull and then a pie of Three Swords there, and I literally went, yes. I woke up the dogs. The dogs started barking. The whole house is like an uproar. But yeah, love to see it. So yeah, that's exactly how you managed to depict Three Swords how I see it through my rose tinted heart frames. That's exactly how I want it to be seen. So yeah, it's a deeply well-loved beer, and as noted on the copy, and I think Brad picked up on that, that crest that you can see on the back of the can there, the three swords, that is still in parts of the stonework at Kirkstall Abbey, which was founded nearly 900 years ago. So that the Easter egg there is that symbol has been used as a symbol of the Abbey, for the wider Kirkstall area, and for the original Kirkstall Brewery Company that was around from 1833 to 1983, before Steve revived the Kirkstall brand in 2011. It's continued to be used like that whole time. So I think it is, if not one of the earliest like trademarks in that sense, it actually goes a bit deeper than a trademark. It's like part of local kind of folklore or something as well. So it does paying homage to the past in the name and the symbol for our best-selling cask beer. So yeah, it goes without saying that like it's this, if you wanted to sum up Kirkstall in one beer, it's Three Swords.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. It's got that American influence, but it's also completely rooted in almost like the beer that it's the English beer that it reminds me of most is Landlord. You know, it's got that kind of residually juicy, light body, but then a ton of hops. But like you said, the perfect word, integrated, is sort of the word I was grasping for while trying to describe just how almost subtle those American hops are sat in it. I want you to tell me about the pub that you took me to. So I went up to Kirkstall twice. Once to visit the brewery itself and once to visit Tetley. And after the Tetley shoot, Brad had to go home. You were like, there's a pub I need to take you to where they serve, you said they serve Three Swords better than we do. Tell me about that pub.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the pub's name is the Templar, as in like the Knights Templar. And it's actually owned by Green King, but it used to be a Melbourne brewery house, one of Leeds' older breweries. It's got beautiful green and cream tiles on the outside and some lovely like stone like work. It's one of those pubs where you more often than not, because obviously I've spent a long time living in London, I used to see buildings like that and they've been turned into like a hairdresser's or a random like some business or something now, and you're like, it's one of those places and you think, God, I bet that was an absolutely amazing pub back in the day. So the Templar is one of those places that actually still is a pub. Whilst it is owned by Green King, who people might have mixed feelings about, absolutely fair to do so. They've actually done a really good job of keeping the right people in charge of that. They have an actual proper full-time cellarman. They have a very tightly controlled but impeccably well-kept range of cask. And yes, if there is one place that I would take anybody to for a pint of Three Swords in the centre of town, and I couldn't take them to the Tetley, or I couldn't take them to, if it was on in Whitelocks or somewhere else like that, the Templar is the place where you will find other people from the Leeds beer industry ducking out of the hustle and bustle. They perhaps even try to avoid their industry colleagues and go to the Templar. They know that they're going to have an absolutely impeccably kept, perfectly conditioned pint. And I remember when I took you there, we caught up with Mike as well. The Swords was in impeccable nick, and like the glassware was so clean that even the lacing wasn't able to like cling to it.
Yeah, I can shut up about it. I've never finished a pint.
That's how you want to see Swords.
Have it perfectly clear. It was amazing.
Sounds like I missed out.
Yeah, the Templar is an absolute must go to. It does not get mentioned that much.
Got a comment here from Gav Little. The Thai
Have
restaurant
you had
next
any
door.
questions that I can help answer? I think we had a few.
Yeah. Let me dig out those questions.
Yeah, I think they're talking about Zap Time.
Okay. Here's one. David Bailey. Hello.
Yes. 4 swords, 5 swords, etc. Well, he's closer to the mark than he realizes, to be honest, because we were in a sort of internal company lingo. Whenever we make something that is basically a really cracking pale ale that is slightly stronger, say 5% or above, we jokingly moniker it. Oh, this is actually probably more like 4 swords, isn't it? Like, I think we've come close to doing something like 6 swords at one time or another. But the multiples of swords is more commonly heard when people order 3 swords at one of our pubs, and there's always one guy who thinks he's the first person ever to ask for 9 swords when he needs 3 pints. And I've heard many a story, well, not that many, but many a story of bartenders telling me, he's like, a guy came in and ordered 9 swords last night, so I bet he didn't realize what was happening until I was pouring the 8th pint. And he was like, those aren't all for me, are they? You asked for 9 swords, man. Like, everybody calls the beer half the time anyway. So aside from that occasional numerical lack of literacy, it's a perfectly named beer because it represents everything.
Yeah, and it's a sharp little beer, as some people pointed out in the comments.
It's the link to the past. Have I gone again?
Little lag.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. But yeah, 4 swords and 5 swords have existed, but not by those names, essentially.
Right. Okay. So just while we take a very quick pause, I want to talk about the beers that I'm drinking. So you'll notice from that list, lots of the breweries that I'm drinking are either they were sponsors or they were featured in the videos that we made, or indeed in the first series. So Northern Monk weren't in it, but of course Whitelocks were. It's where we filmed the very first scene. And that was a delicious Scotch ale. I'd say a little bit too dry for a Scotch ale, but actually a little bit better for it. Loads of really hedgerow fruity, kind of grapefruity, like really cascadey, actually. Really good UK Cascade must have gone in, and that was delicious. But this motherfucker is incredible. Absolutely. I mean, it's 7.2,
really?
but it's... Where's it? What did I say it was brewed in? That would have been 2021, I think. So loads of oxidation, but it's gone to sherry, and then it's just raisins and dates and figs and just sticky deliciousness, little bit of orange. It's so fucking good. Like,
wow.
Maybe the best beer I've had this year, certainly at home. It's just stonking,
Really?
and I'm going to drink the whole fucking thing. And I've also popped to my local deli to get me some pub snacks.
I could see you cutting there. That's what you were cutting, was it?
I was cutting up my very nice pork Scotch egg.
Did you cut the Scotch egg so we could see the sort of delicious cross section?
Well, I also do it.
Right.
I do it because if you cut open a Scotch egg and it's cooked all the way through, you know, you just need to know that's going to come. The last thing you want is to bite into a Scotch egg and be disappointed. You want to know you're going to be disappointed before you go in. Yeah.
How many Scotch eggs do you reckon you could eat, Johnny?
Well, today 1, because I bought 1, and at £4.50 a pop, 1.
Yeah, don't 3. Yeah, 3 seems sensible, I think. Alan Partridge, you'd get very gassy, wouldn't you, after a certain number of Scotch eggs.
But I'd regret it.
Chris, you were talking about the Cock Tavern earlier. I believe I saw on socials that they do a pickled egg eating competition. I don't know if you're aware of this.
They do, yeah.
So, have you ever witnessed it? I've not. I'd like to go. I might actually go and watch it. It sounds interesting.
I've witnessed a number of people tackling it over the years with varying degrees of success.
Yeah,
I believe the last time I was there, I think it was Joel who was one of the managers. I don't know if he's still there. I think he was still top of the leaderboard, but Lily Waits was quite high ranking on the challenge. I personally, I don't believe in speed eating something like that. Not because I could definitely do it, but like I actually enjoy eating those pickled eggs. The idea of trying to taste it as little as possible and shove it down my gullet makes me feel a bit queasy. But yeah, they also have. I'm trying to remember. I had a balsamic pickled egg there. I think the last time I was there, about a month or so ago.
So, was that like sort of dyed like a dark color, like balsamic then?
Yeah, so it was like the color of
like what those 100-year eggs are called. The color of what? Sorry, I'm talking over you.
like the color of like an aubergine. It was just off black, indigo-ish sort of tinge.
Slightly.
Do you know,
Like a very nice sprinkle of salt.
I think my perfect beer snack, I've never even thought about this, but for me, the best part of ramen is the egg, right? Which is, it's soaked in, was it soy sauce, sesame, and maybe mirin. If they were on the bar in pubs, fuck, that would be the end of my arteries, I reckon. Because I could just eat them like they're going out of fashion. I'd finish a jar with big Kilners. I would. They're like crack.
Soy glazed eggs, eh?
Yeah,
it is a beautiful thing.
There you go. See, people are with me. This could happen.
Somebody's asked me about something. Oh. What have I got?
Question for Chris.
I need to give a quick shout out to someone who's on the chat first. Sorry, Adrian Kirk. He also sadly was not able to get his box of beers. DHL let him down as well, but he was an absolute gentleman about it when we got in touch with him. He was very understanding, and naturally we're going to look after him. And I just wanted to say hi, Adrian. We appreciate it. We don't always have perfectly understanding people in response to problems and difficulties like the rest of us, but you were an absolute gent, so thank you.
Thank you very much, man. Yeah, do apologize. It's couriers, people repairing roads. We just don't know. It's like giving your baby to a stranger sometimes.
The question about the furthest away Kirkstall has been served on cask, that's a good question. Definitely Italy. We actually have a good import partner over there in Italy. There seems to be a resurgence and that kind of thing going on over in Italy at the moment, which is really cool because when I worked at Brew by Numbers, and Key Cake was like the default kind of like draft format for a lot of for craft beers. We did a lot of export at Brew by Numbers to Europe, and the Italians were very fond of taking key kegs and just hooking them up to a hand pull and just beer engineering something and just doing it Italian cask style, which I was initially mortified about, and then I've become increasingly curious about it. And just I don't hate it in principle. I know it's neither of two things, which is really interesting to me, but feels like a kind of a provenance of its own kind, its own kind of weird kind of method. So yeah, but it seems to be that they've gotten really into actual proper cask now. So maybe you need to Keep Cask Alive to Italy and just see what those guys think of it.
Well, hey, I'd love season 3 Keep Cask Alive. So there's the what's it called? Norex, like the Northeast American Cask Ale Festival, Cask Ale Expo, which is in New England somewhere. And yeah, going to, because Belgium Lambic breweries occasionally serve their beer on cask, and then Italy does have a slight cask culture. Been contacted by somebody from Sweden, and they have an organization called something Protectorate of the Cask or something, and they're all obsessed with cask ale and run a cask ale festival. So there's definitely a video in places that have been inspired by British cask ale culture. I think
the most expensive video we will have ever made.
Yeah, a lot of travel. They travel for a low margin product. We've got a great question, which I think is a great thing to do before we do the brewery tour, which comes from Tim Jones, who asks, it seems to me that West Yorkshire, but even more specifically Leeds Bradford area, has an incredible array of successful breweries. Is this an accurate perception? And is there any reason for this? Christopher.
So I would say it's a multi-part answer maybe, but I would say if we think about when the kind of what we want to call the craft beer revolution kind of really kicked off, and we're thinking about really early exponents of that, people like Thornbridge, and before that Roosters and Franklin's and that sort of thing. what you have to remember is that it was actually a key piece of legislation that really kind of changed everything. And that was the beer duty escalator that was brought in by Gordon Brown. And when that happened, it created these different ceilings for maximum amounts of duty that could be paid by people who produce fixed volumes annually. Because the lower ceiling, which I can't remember what it was, but I want to say it's 5,000 hectolitres. It's legislation that's still in effect, yeah. So it's 5,000, and because it was so advantageously cheap in like duty terms, not compared to people in other countries who pay F all on like that kind of side of things, but it was a big change. It was a sufficiently big change that it basically changed the industry overnight, and tiny little 3 and 5 barrel brew kits were propping up all over the place. And the reason why there was perhaps a greater concentration of those across West Yorkshire and North Yorkshire than maybe other places, South Yorkshire to an extent as well, is because the infrastructure of cask ale was still there. Whilst it had declined, that infrastructure was still there in the working men's clubs and the clubs and pubs and stuff. So it meant that those handpulls were still ready to go. They just needed to be refurbished. And whilst they had become decorative, or perhaps only had a limited selection of beers on there, like breaking them off the monopolies in the 90s and then the beer duty escalator created this fertile soil in which for a lot of breweries to pop up really quickly. That same infrastructure was not in place in a lot of parts of the south of England and in central London, and even in some of the larger cities. In the north of England, a lot of that had gone away entirely. But around West Yorkshire and South and North Yorkshire, there was still a very ready market for that kind of stuff. And because there was a sheer amount of variety of small producers, it meant that they were producing small amounts of beer that was turning over faster, and the cask was tasting great as a result. They were following the lead of people like Roosters and Thornbridge and experimenting with American hops. And I remember drinking in Leeds and Wakefield and around that area in like 2004, 2005, like when I was studying up there, and being really excited about, hearing about these really beers with really exotic hops in them, like Cascade. Wow, what is this? Where is that from? And there was just like a huge, burst of that market that just went absolutely crazy. Not all of those breweries are still around, but they continue to, I guess I'm going further with agricultural metaphors, we have this fertile soil, and then they were passing the nutrients into the soil by having a healthy, fast-moving beer culture, and then further things could grow from there. And then when the beer industry changed and adapted, if you hadn't had any of that, you wouldn't have had the possibility of brewers like Cloudwater and Track and Kirkstall and other people that came around then in that next decade. Who, for Kirkstall's part, in 2011, it was very much a cask focused business back then, because that's where the variety and the throughput was. It was keg craft beer that took longer to become more of a fixture in the north of England, whereas that was the default setting for it, if you like, in London. But that happened much, much later. As I say, I was around for earlier parts of that, but really from 2010, 2012 onwards, I'd say it was very much key cakes of stuff going everywhere. Whereas in the north of England, it was still very much the heartland of cask, and that's just how it's remained. It's a long, rambling answer, but you've got it.
No, but I think it's definitely something that's forgotten in sort of the history of British craft beer, is that, that revolution really started in 2002 with that small brewers relief change from Gordon Brown. And that for the first 7 years or so of that, it was cask that led that. And, you had people that got in there before the... Yeah. And a couple of people snuck in before that change happened, people like Darkstar. But there was a real rush of great cask ale coming out for sort of 6-7 years. And you look at the northern early adopters of sort of craft beer and certainly American hops in the north, and they're all, or were, and probably still are to some extent, cask ale brewers, Roosters, Thornbridge, those kind of guys. You look at the southern breweries that came out, and they're 6-7 years later in their keg, their Colonel, who and Meantime as well, though they were just before the change, that eschewed cask completely. You know, they had a different way, either American inspired or European inspired. So yeah, it definitely does make sense that not only does Leeds and I think Manchester have a really healthy and long history of great cask, but also they were the we kept going up there basically for Keep Cask Alive, because that is the heartland of cask now, and maybe it would have been more spread beforehand. It definitely did concentrate in the north for those reasons.
I think I made a similar point at when we were doing the Q&A part at the end of the Tetley screening. Because I mentioned that people had talked to me in the brewery and around Leeds, being like, "I'm talking about Keep Cask Alive, but like, cask's fine, right?" And I'm like, "That I'm all right, Jack attitude is not what we need. Like, we need to think about this differently. It's like we have become the heartland. We are the last kingdom to be burned. This is where you have to lead it from. You can't lead a charge from the wilderness. You need to start from this like stronghold of where everything is exactly what we should be proud of and what we want to take out into the world. And that makes us all need to become missionaries for this cause, you know, monks to that cause. Then so be it." But yeah, it's a really interesting point. The geographics in this, and as well as the politics, is actually really interesting, especially when you've like lived through bits of it as we have. It is really interesting.
Yeah, and just a bit of context with the Keep Cask Alive original series and where that came from, because that first series, the first 5 episodes, were sponsored by Fuller's / Asahi, and the reason that they came to us, the reason that sponsorship came about and that we had the money to make that series, is because Asahi acquired Fuller's in 2019, I think it was, when Fuller's sort of split off, and they suddenly looked around in London and went, well, where is the cask scene in London? There isn't one. You know, if we, for whatever reason, have to stop serving to Fuller's pubs because they're no longer the same company, our volume is gone, basically. And so they wanted to have conversations about how they get cask ale, the cask ale scene in London revived. And we said to them, to do that, it's going to be a much wider campaign than just where are the London cask ale breweries at. And so it very much came from that idea that, the north is still a heartland, but in the south, it's essentially gone. There's hotbeds, Shepherd Neame, Kent was doing okay. I think probably, you go pushing on to the Midlands, Herefordshire, Worcestershire, where the hops are grown, they're doing okay because they still have that culture as well in the same way that the north did. But, in London, Fuller's is still the only historic cask ale brewery left. Obviously, we have Sandbrooks, who do a great job and make great beer, but really it's those two, and there's not a lot of heritage to Sandbrooks. It's a new brewery, so wild times. And we often hear people go like, it's not dying.
I'm trying to remember when it came up. I wrote the deep dive into Fuller's for Good Beer Hunting not very long before the sale, and in that, I think, I can't remember what the exact number of years was, but it was like there is a gap in independent ownership of a brewery of like something like 138 years or something like that. It's like after Fuller's, like you say, it was Sandbrooks, and it's like that just feels nuts. But at that time, independence felt like it was intrinsically linked with quality and ethics, and I'm very much of the opinion that you guys have shared before, whereas independence was not the thing we should have been trying to benchmark and put put some principles around. It was integrity that we should have been latching on to, not independence. And I think from what you guys have said about what's happened since then with Asahi and Fuller's, it's certainly encouraging. So I think that is good. If it means there's a better caretaker for that brand, then that is great to see, because it's beyond iconic. It's like Neolithic kind of like importance. Like going around that brewery is amazing. It's like just being in these concentric rings of history where the oldest bit is right in the middle and it keeps growing out and out. Is just like it's like you've just cut through a tree kind of thing. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it, actually. Yeah, cutting through a tree and seeing those rings of the Griffin Brewery and outwards. Two quick things.
On to Virtuous now. I feel like
yes. Sorry, yeah. So we'll move on to Virtuous, which I've corrected the typo in the now drinking. So do get onto that. Just to dig into the comments super quickly. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, probably not to the same extent of Kent, but very similar. And I sort of lump that, whatever it is, that bit that comes out of the bottom of England into one. So humble apologies there. 5 points, absolutely, but scale-wise, minuscule compared to the other two. Although, 5 points an hour, I think about 25, maybe 30,000 hectolitres. But Fuller's and Sandbrooks are both, I think, double that. So, hugely important culturally and obviously make fantastic beer. But yeah, in terms of, really great big beer, great cask ale breweries supplying, the entirety of London. There's only really two, and only one of them has a heritage longer than 20 years at this point. But hopefully 5 points and Sandbrooks will last like they have. Yeah, great. Tell us about Virtuous.
Certainly. So, as much as Three Swords is the biggest selling cask product of ours, Virtuous is the biggest selling product overall by a huge, huge margin. So this is always found in keg and in can. It's very much, if you want to say like what keeps the lights on, it's Virtuous, and Three Swords pays everybody's wages, and Judicious probably gets me a nice little bit of marketing fluff every now and again. But this is the beer that we really like, live or die by. It's the most important beer that we make because not just of that huge amount of the production volume that it takes up, but they're delivering it consistently and time and again. Well, some people would say maybe it's a bit hard to get truly excited about one more session IPA. And I would understand that. I'm not saying everything about this beer is completely unique, but it does have a story of its own. It was a product that was developed after Kirkstall moved into its new site at 100 Kirkstall Road. Yes, that's the real address. In 2017, I think they were on site from 2015 building the new space, which you'll get to see a little bit of in the brewery tour. Virtuous was a project to deliver basically a flagship keg and can products, a beer that was going to be able to go anywhere and do anything. And as I mentioned before, Steve's very keen to have an inclusive range as well as a diverse range. So when we developed this beer, it was heavily influenced by Kirkstall's history with Sierra Nevada. Steve Holtz, as well as being the founder of Kirkstall, about 8 years before he did that, so I think it's around 2002, 2003, he was the first agent in the UK to import Sierra Nevada to this country in refrigerated containers alongside the likes of Stone and Dogfish Head and Odell's and a lot of the legendary beers of the West Coast and Midwest. Our Steve and Steve Grossman over there, brother of Ken, are literally like so tight. I've watched Steve Grossman come into one of our pubs to meet our Steve because he happened to be over on a business trip. And these two men in their 60s embraced each other like long lost brothers. It was so hard to see, but like they genuinely are that tight and they go back that far. Steve was the guy that brought Sierra Nevada to the UK. And part of that journey meant that when he wanted to start a brewery of his own, he had to make a tough decision, and he sold the import rights to, we were just talking about them, Fuller's. So when he did that, that gave him the capital to be able to start his own brewery, but the relationship with Sierra Nevada never went away. They were really excited to hear about us getting a new site and doing new things. And they actually, the next time we were still kind of distributing a little bit of their beer before that agreement came to an end, they actually sent some hops alongside the beer in the container. Those of you who have heard stories about hops held in being held up at customs may know what I'm about to say next. Naturally, when the container was opened and they saw these big vacuum bags full of sticky green leaves, it was embargoed. And there was a big hoo-ha about whether we were going to be able to get anything. So it was a kind gesture on their part, but it created a bit of a clusterfuck when it arrived in the UK. Suffice to say, we've always remained tight with them, and we started redistributing Sierra Nevada again more recently, predominantly draft nationally, but predominantly focused on the draft, and we're mostly focused on the core range. We represent them at festivals. We ensure they always have a big presence in everything that we do, and everything that they do has influenced us. So there is a little bit of DNA, Sierra Nevada DNA, that goes into a lot of things that we do. As you say, Three Swords, for example, is, yes, it's American hops, but it's undeniably British. Whereas like this is perhaps a bit more representative of a technical leap forward for Kirkstall, and also clinging on to those friendships that helped build the brand before it was a brand. Virtuous is a nice name, but it's also a nod to its more kind of like ethical kind of ethical bonuses, I suppose, alongside it. We don't advertise it up front as being vegan friendly and gluten free. It just happens to be vegan friendly and gluten free as well. We use the same stabilizing agent, Clarex, that a lot of brewers use, which means that we can brew it exactly the same way with barley and wheat, use Clarex to pull that out of suspension and basically make it certified gluten free. The same is not true for all of our beers, but it is true for Spokane, which we're going to have later, and also our Pilsner and a couple of other things that we do on a regular basis. As I mentioned, Steve likes the range being inclusive. We thought the best thing for Virtuous would be that it could be the beer that everyone can order at the bar. And as an increasing number of people have to live with and change their habits around their either dietary requirements or like their dietary lifestyle choices, I think it's pretty cool that all 7 of those people, one of whom could be a celiac, one of whom could be vegan, could all order the same beer together and not feel like they're being isolated by having to ask for the special one for me, please. We'd much rather it could be a beer that anybody can have and that there's no bar for entry. And while we're at it, let's make it a really cracking West Coast beer, because those beers deserve recognition. So yeah, that's Virtuous.
Yeah. I mean, you've talked about like Three Swords speaking about everything that that you do, and it definitely does do that. But I think that Virtuous just makes it really clear to everybody just how important Kirkstall and Steve have been to the beer industry. And I've certainly been super guilty of. I met Steve for the first time only 3 years ago at the 3 years ago at the anniversary, the 150th anniversary of the first IPA being brewed in Burton. And I had really no idea who he was other than the owner of Kirkstall. But yeah, the person that brought Sierra Nevada to the UK, somebody that founded a brewery that has links back to a monastery that's 900 years old, and somebody who is by far the biggest curator of Breweriana from the last 200 years. And now,
oh, absolutely,
you were the most enthusiastic backers of this campaign from the very start as well, because I didn't even have to really pitch to you, Chris. I just went, we want to get UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage listing, and it will cost you this much. And you went like, yeah, Steve will be into that. I'll double check. And that was kind of it. It was.
Yeah, I think we had like maybe a 20-minute video conversation where it was mostly me talking about how excited I was about it. Like, you literally didn't tell me anything. I was just like sat there, just like chanting in the background.
Yeah, so I'd love to do a video all about Steve, but that's essentially what the Kirkstall video is going to be. It's going to be 20 minutes of Steve and 10 minutes of a brew day, and the 10 minutes of you and me that we couldn't squeeze in. And I think it's going to amaze a lot of people what Kirkstall have done for the beer industry while being very quiet about it. And it's very nice that you're getting to tell those stories now for Kirkstall, but it's also very nice that it hasn't been, kind of plastered anywhere, that there aren't huge claims being made about it, which I think a lot of breweries and brands would like to do. And, frequently do, and then have to sort of claw themselves back a little bit as people go, I'm not sure that's accurate. Whereas I think it probably would be for Kirkstall and Steve.
It's a pretty cool situation to be in as somebody who's developed their own specialization in marketing, to work for a brewery like this one, because they have very much been a good example of a show not tell kind of approach. We don't need to tell people that this is what we believe in. We're going to show them what we believe in. It's going to be self-evident in the range of beers, in the pubs themselves. Our biggest and most effective sales tool for the account managers is to bring people to the brewery, because as soon as they step through the front door, they have the same feeling that I had when I first stepped through the front door. I was like, oh, this is the real deal. That's a very powerful thing to do. And it'd be very easy for me to just every day, just post a picture of the tap room, just literally take a picture of a mirror and a sign and be like, this is nice, isn't it? But my approach has been to not to try and shout over the noise, but to be that kind of like quiet, consistent voice that just acts, and by result of those actions draws attention to what we're doing and why we're doing it. The hardest thing for me is actually knowing to what extent to go into, because there's no short story, there's no snappy short quote about anything Kirkstall does. Everything I talk about, I start in one place and then I've got 25 other things to tell you, because actually it's also connected to this thing. And the really interesting thing is that 25 years ago, this other thing happened. And then when we've done that, I can then tell you about they're going to get to the future and the past and the politics and the geographics and all the rest of it. Everything is a long read that I have to deal with. The hardest part is basically just baiting that hook to bring people to that huge font of information, which could be one of our pubs and one of our beers, and what we do at a festival. It's been a challenge with the festival to do that, because it's a big ask of people. The first year, when I had to people believe me more than anything that I was doing something that was going to exist. The subsequent years, I've got visual evidence that I have done this before and I know what I'm doing. But the first year was very, very hard, because everybody believed in the idea of Kirkstall being able to do this, but they had not seen it whatsoever. So it was a big ask of people to be like, we are trying to take this tradition and this history as seriously as possible. Have I built up enough goodwill and trust from the local community over the number of years for them to be like, yeah, I know you were going to do that. And now I'm in year 3, so I feel like I've almost got over my imposter syndrome about the whole thing. Nearly, maybe a little bit. No, I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
Brad's picked up on it. Yeah.
Can we address this, Chris?
You want to know about the exhibition?
Yeah, we keep skirting around.
So, the Great Exhibition of Prize Ales.
Show it again, Chris.
The Great Exhibition of Prize Ales. Sorry. The Great Exhibition of Prize Ales is a celebration of historic beers, and every year we invite a selection of breweries, typically ranging between about 25 to 30 different breweries, not just to pour beer at our festival, but we actually challenge them to recreate something from history. Now, that might be something that's local to them. It might be something that they've been inspired by from overseas. But the main idea behind it is that we want them to show us a link to the past. And typically that takes the form of beers that are anything between, I would say, 40, 50, and maybe 250 years old. The really cool thing about our festival is that it focuses on atmosphere and immersion as much as anything else. So you can expect to see and feel and taste and hear lots of things that are part of that historic experience as well. We cultivate the musical performance very specifically, with anything that can range from kind of like folk music through like jazz and swing, trying to get you into a party atmosphere, but with a historic flavor to it. Our food vendors normally run the gamut of things you would love to have at a beer festival. This year, I'm proud to say there's a substantial amount of pies and sausages, but there are vegan options available as well. The other cool thing that we do is we actually judge those beers based, in this case, on different categories, normally about 10, with an 11th overall champion category. We get medals made for those people and certificates, because that's what the Victorians used to do when they had beer competitions. So you'll be able to see brewers proudly wearing their medals if they've won in that category. And this year we've got, I think, what could be the most diverse lineup. Brewers there. I will quickly rattle off a list for you. So as well as ourselves and Leeds Brewery, we've got the likes of Allsops, Amity, Anspash and Hobday, Black Lodge from Liverpool, Boundary from Belfast, Braybrook, Market Harborough, Colbeer from Liverpool, Fell from Cumbria, Fierce from Scotland, 5 Points, Horsforth, Little Earth Project, Lost Cause, Lost and Grounded, Northern Monk, Roosters, Round Corner, who I'm going to brew at next week for a beer for the festival, Siren, Wylam, Theakston, Anthology, Heritage Brew Co, and Buxton. So that is a pretty broad range. The inspiration behind it was always that we'll be able to have traditional breweries and modern breweries side by side, sharing stories, getting inspired by each other's beers, and that's basically how it's continued to work. Theakston in particular are really putting a massive effort in this year. They're Cooper Ewan. I don't know if you've met Ewan before, Johnny, if you've been to Theakston's, but he's like Hook Norton. Yeah, so like Hook Norton, Theakston have also got a traditional tower brewer and an on-house, kind of like Cooper. And Ewan is going to not only set up his own bar, make sure that we've got some Old Peculiar from the wood on cask. He's also going to be doing some barrel raising demonstrations through the festival. He sent me a beer list the other day, which, as I said, involves Old Peculiar from the wood, which is a bit of a regional specialty. You might see it in some few pubs, select pubs. They're also bringing a version of their XB, and I've been told that Theakston are doing a salted caramel porter for the festival. And that reason alone is enough to get me pretty excited. But I would say as well, the big variety this year, and perhaps the change to previous years, has been more diversity of styles. There's probably fewer big beers overall. Just what big beers are coming, I'm very, very excited about, particularly from Buxton and also our own barrel age series. But the real variety this year, which I think you guys might find interesting and speaks to a lot of the trends you talk about, not just on the show but on the podcast as well, is that there's a far greater submission of lager and stout this year than we've seen before, and that is very much a sign of the times. I think. So I'm really excited to see how that comes. But there's also been a really concerted effort to recreate some Victorian IPAs this year, which I'm really looking forward to seeing them pitted against each other. Fitting.
Yeah. So yeah, this is what won round 3. It's not based off of any old recipe, but it is as we said in the Keep Cask Alive, it's everything but the Brett essentially is trying to be original. So it's Marisotto, which wasn't invented for about 50 years halfway through the 20th century, but invert number 2, classic ingredient for back then. Goldings, which is probably the hop that was being used in these IPAs. And then it's gone through the Burton Union. And I have to say it's absolutely delicious, really really kind of marmalade-y and berried as well, like really quite sort of sweet flavors, but very, very dry and bitter. It's absolutely delicious. I actually weirdly preferring this in bottle than on cask, because I think it's actually getting a bit more zip and a bit more life to it on cask. I think it
that makes sense to me. I'm a big fan of what they've done with the union stuff. But I think it was that one that I tried last on cask is like, I understand what you're saying, like having a bit of lift to it, stop it becoming too like raisiny kind of like feel, like cloying kind of date-like sweetness to it, which 100%. I felt like the cask version maybe had. That could also be a temperature thing as well, I guess. But I think I can't wait to see what else they do. Unfortunately, Thornbridge, whilst they have poured the last 2 years, they haven't been able to make it to the festival this year. But, and this is like the biggest endorsement I can ever get, Dominic Driscoll is taking the time off work to come to the festival, even though he's not pouring.
So he's not only not in the brewery, he's not in his allotment.
Yeah, I know. If anybody wants to just quickly Google Dominic Driscoll cabbage, so they know who we're talking about, by all means go do so. He's one of the loveliest men. loveliest men in beer. And I know there's good competition for that rank, but he is definitely up there. Dom's an amazing guy. He's been a really big backer of the festival. So is Pete Brown, who's coming back to judge this year, alongside Matthew Curtis, my good friend Charlie Doherty from We Are Beer. Hopefully you guys as well, if you want to get involved in some judging. And we've also got Beth from White Locks coming to do some judging as well. It's a pretty special panel.
If we can make those dates work, we'd love to be involved.
Can I dress like a Victorian gentleman?
I insist that you do. I was hoping you might come as some kind of like strong man.
A strong man? Oh, like I need to have a little like curly mustache. Yeah. The weakest strong man is alive in Portland vibes. Yeah. We had a really good question, Johnny. I don't know if we want to answer it now, but it's about UNESCO. Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it. So we are wildly behind. Like
we are
by our standards, wildly behind. So we're going to answer this question, then we're going to do the brewery tour, and then supposedly we have 2 beers to drink.
Well, should we crack? Oh, is everyone ready for Flamingo?
Tell you what, let's crack Flamingo. Even though in the next video we say we're going to drink Flamingo.
You're ruining it already, Jesus.
sorry.
Don't worry, no one can hear you say it anyway, Chris.
Sorry about the sound quality. It's a working brewery, etc. I did my best.
It's okay. Angie WR's your Keep Cask Alive series has been great. Perhaps I missed it, but what would it mean for breweries and pubs if the UNESCO campaign goes through? How will it benefit cask ale? So the wonderful Jed from York University does sort of talk us through this, but essentially there's 3 main ways that it will help. One is there are safeguardings that the government would have to put in place. So there are ways, essentially commitments that the government has to make to protect certain elements of it. And those will be decided as a result of what is defined and how we go about that. That's obviously about 5 years away, that exact definition. So exactly how that would be applied, we're not quite sure yet. The second thing you get is if you get UNESCO recognition, you are given access to certain funds that UNESCO has in place. So you can use those funds to either directly support the industry or to particularly educate people about that particular culture. So it might be funding for museums, it might be funding for events, it might be funding for competitions, whatever it is that educates people about that. And in particular, UNESCO has a focus on educating the youth around this, and obviously that's a hugely important thing for cask ale for the simple reason that cask ale is not being consumed that much by younger generations. So having the budget there that we can specifically direct at the education of younger generations is really important. So we'd get access to that funding, and then finally, as we talked about quite a lot with Norbert in Belgium, it's that marketing kick. It's that ability for us to go to the public and say this is important to your identity, your economy, your culture. We can go to politicians and say, hey, if you're going to raise that beer duty, you're affecting a UNESCO recognized culture and industry, and people are going to be mad about that, essentially. But then also in terms of tourism, so in terms of saying to people, you all know these cliches about the British pint, about it supposedly being warm and flat, but did you know that the fact that it's warm and flat is fucking UNESCO protected, motherfuckers? And it's also not warm or flat. That's just badly served cask ale. So those are the 3 ways that it can help, and the marketing is immediate, the education is longer term, and the safeguarding is forever. So they'll have different impacts at different times. But the way that I sort of really see this is it's a way that we have an extra tool to go to government, that when they raise the duty, the business rates, when they have a public health discussion around the impact of beer, my real hope is that as a result of that UNESCO designation, we can turn around and go, well, not only is it important to our identity and our culture, but it's also, you have to counter that against the public health argument about alcohol, obviously not being great for us, particularly in larger quantities. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways it can help, but they're quite intangible, as the name would suggest. What is very tangible is the dog on Chris's lap.
Is that Pom or Bosch?
Sorry, yeah, I had to look out for a quick comfort break, and when I came back, I found Yuri in here.
That's Yuri.
Yuri is our this is Yuri. He's the second Pomeranian that we have. The first one is Bosch, which you guys have met before. who's the black Hummer we've got. And this is Yuri, who we got just over a year ago. It's about 18 months old now. This is as big as it gets, for anybody wondering.
Glorious creature.
He's now going to be a special guest for the rest of this, I think.
Are you sure? Is that not a dire wolf? I've seen lots of information about freshly birthed dire wolves. I think Yuri looks a bit like one. Maybe
yeah, so that video that was doing the rounds about the direwolf babies like howling, we played that to Yuri, and he was very, very interested. I think he could understand what they were asking, but we can't get him to tell us what they were saying. So it's kind of a one-way translation.
Wow. Well, hi Yuri, you've stolen the show.
Stolen the limelight, even as a super chat comes in from Alder Slayer. Who says, you've touched on it already, but what would be your strategy for getting younger folks into cask beer? I'm 26 myself, and not many of my friends would go near it. So if we had a simple answer to that, we'd kind of all be doing it. But I think that the starting point for that conversation has to be the uniqueness of cask ale. And by that, I mean, it's about as fresh as beer can get. It's locally produced, very likely. It is naturally produced as well. So quite often there are very, even this didn't make it into the video about the perfect pour, but there is an argument back the other way about isinglass. This idea that sure you could tip a load of silicon into your beer, or you could just use a tiny bit of fish swim bladder, which is you'd eat it. It's a food product. You could just put it into a liquid food that you have. So this idea that it is a more natural process, and the fact that you're supporting small and often independent and hopefully ethical businesses, and those are things that we're constantly told from focus groups and research that this is what Gen Z care about. And I don't think that cask beer has done a very good job at all of communicating any of that. And I think that is essentially the thing that should underpin all the conversations that we have about cask. And then all the different breweries will need to find their particular angles to do that. And I do think that UNESCO recognition could be a really good, or indeed, I should say the living heritage recognition from the government, which hopefully we'll have next year. We'll be applying for it in the next couple of weeks. That should also be the lightning rod for those kind of conversations as well. Chris, if you've got a quick answer to that as well, as somebody who does have to market and sell cask ale, we'll then do the brewery tour 45 minutes later than
I think you guys touched on it. Yeah, you guys touched on it really well. I think in the episode where you went to Devonshire and you were talking about Guinness alongside the perfect serve for light cask. I think the answer styles is key. As long as you have that variety of different styles of cask and that you can incorporate newer trends into your offering, which with cask is very easy to do. It's a shorter production time, so it means that you should be able to jump onto what people are engaged with really, really quickly. I think the other key aspect is just quality and ensuring that the spaces in which the great cask is served is inclusive and welcoming, because I can understand why people might feel like some of those spaces aren't always the most welcoming to them. But I can promise you that, not just speaking for Kirkstall, but everything that we do is all about trying to be as inclusive as possible and diverse in terms of the range and the people who work for us and the staff that we have in our venues. Each of those pubs has its own demographic, and the Cardigan Arms, which Johnny came to speak to Steve, is staffed almost exclusively by Gen Z people with a wide variety of backgrounds, and it's used by the local community as a very creative and diverse space that encourages everybody to come to. I think that kind of model is the way to ensure that people feel welcome in those spaces and feel excited about the range of things that are available to them. All those other things that we get excited about, that'll come in time. The main thing is to get them through the door, I think.
Yeah, totally agree.
I'm quite old, but I can remember a time when sourdough bread was like, what's sourdough bread, right? So it was, you know, we all know now that's incredible. It tastes better than, you know, macro white bread that you can buy from wherever. And I think it's just about re-educating people into understanding the products and the sort of delivery system that's unique. In a similar way to, you know, that foodstuffs like that have kind of come into their own with the sort of younger generations. I feel like that's the way we can get in there. And also, I've said this jokingly to Johnny in a pub, but I do kind of think that if we were to make a lower alcohol, well, cask is pretty low alcohol anyway, but if we made lower alcohol cask that was, you know, allowed to drink at 16, let's say, and it was kind of subsidized at the bar, a bit cheaper, so you're drinking sensible, delicious, you know, well kept, well made beer, getting you into cask at a younger age, in a sensible way where you're not drinking higher ABV stuff. I think that's actually genuinely like a pretty good approach as well. But obviously, it might be a bit unpopular to sort of encourage drinking at a younger age. But people drink at a younger age, so that is kind of what my kind of feeling might be on it. Don't know.
I think it's a cool idea. I just don't think it would ever happen. Cask
It
at
would never
16,
happen.
everything else at 18. But
Yeah.
Okay, right. So a couple of quick things. So people are now drinking the Flamingo. We'll talk about that after the brewery tour, and then after Flamingo, we're going to have the Spokane and try to rein this old freight train in. But first, two quick things. The first one is that should you be amazed by the delicious beer that you have tonight and the wonderful insight from Chris, you can get 10% off all Kirkstall beers until April 20th.
It's 15% off.
Why am I put 10% when the actual fucking code says 15? Wait, I can do it all over again. Get 15% off Kirkstall beers with CBC 15.
Yeah, it's 15% off beers until April 20th.
There you go. So please do stock up if you missed out on the beers tonight, or if you want to get more.
Or if you want to get a cool T-shirt like mine, you can also get that on the web shop. Just saying.
Wait, I'm going solo layout. Show us again. Look at that.
So this is the original Victorian Brewery branding, which we recreated for a T-shirt and many other things. It's actually going to be a special version of the Three Swords branding coming soon that is going to be inspired by this, that you'll be able to see out in the wild pretty soon as well. But yeah, it's 50% everything on the web shop, so whether that's like beers or merch or whatever you can get. As I said before, we can't ship glass, but if you want to come and collect from the brewery and you happen to be in Leeds, which I know some of you are, that's fine. Otherwise, yeah, we can ship all the cans of merchandise to you 15% off until April 20th. So yeah, get stuck in.
We've also had a super chat from Doyes Doy. Heyo. I love that. I think every comment you've done starts with Heyo. I think the starting point is beer expert blind taste test lager. That's how I got here. Share that video. Maybe I need to go to a pub with like go to the Welling in Birmingham and just blind taste everything on the bar. And then we'll call it like I tasted everything on in this bar and I fell off my bar stool. It could be the way in. Could be the way in. And the final thing is, please do join our Discord. Conversations like this happen every single day in our Discord. It's full of lovely people, and you can support the channel. And that is genuinely what keeps the lights on, not just sponsorships of big campaigns like this. So please do get involved. Right, the brewery tour. So Chris has done a wonderful job with the brewery tour. I don't want to take anything away from him, but the audio is tricky. And I spent a mad half an hour trying to fix it as well. So it's a little bit better than Chris knows, but it's still a little bit hard to understand everything. And I would recommend, particularly if you're watching this on the telly, just have your fingers on the volume, just in case it's a little bit louder or a little bit quiet. Just a little adjust. But if you don't get anything from this, if you don't get anything from what Chris is saying, ask the question afterwards. But you will get to see, you know, the scale and the excitement behind this brand. So yeah, I'm going to show that video, and probably us three are going to go for a mad dash for a wee. So enjoy this. We'll see you in 2 minutes and 12 seconds, folks.
Thank you, Johnny, Brad, and Feature Chris is supporting me. Past Chris, here to do a whistle stop tour around Kirkstall Brewery. Please follow me. Right, as you all know, as you've learned, Future Chris already, Kirkstall Brewery started its current form in 2011, but we still have the original kit in use over here. This is our pilot kit, so it allows us collaborations, small batches, recipe developments, everything new, kind of exciting, particularly as I service most of them. Small 30 pack kit. So the workhorse of the brewery is over here. This is our 50 hectolitre main house. It's a 5-vessel system, currently 3 times a day. All by 4 right now the guys are brewing back to Virtuous, which will probably have a can on about 20 minutes ago. I'm going to quickly show you some of the other recipes here so you can see how it works. In order to brew 3 times a day, you need a lot of water to brew a tank. Here we've got HLT, the hot liquor tank, and TLT, the hot liquor tank. That means that we can brew 3 times a day. Show you into the brew house proper. Here we've got 100 hectolitres, as I mentioned, that's a 50 hectolitre house, double size, twice. This side of our mill, we're all framed to crush the spec, that's why we're still in the style on the side. And then we've got our canning line, doing good work. Lastly, I've got a little bit this is 1 and 2 cold storage units that we have here. So we inherited them from the previous building, which is a dairy warehouse. It's very convenient that we managed to start with cold storage on site so that all of our packaged beer can be kept hot. I think that's just about all the time that I've got to be able to speak to you. I'm sure that Future Chris is getting thirsty. He's probably very much in need of what I believe is going to be Flamingo. Is that right, Johnny, Brad, Future Chris? Is it Flamingo next?
It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Flamingo, Christopher.
He's right.
That's right.
Right.
Feature past,
Yeah.
past Chris.
Past Chris, what an absolute character. Yeah, he's right. We absolutely are going into Flamingo. That video was a little bit silly. I was persuaded by James, my designer, who was holding the phone camera, to pretend that I was like an outside broadcast reporter for that. So he forced me to carry around an unplugged microphone, and I decided that I was going to address myself in the future, and therefore also in the past. So yeah, past Chris was absolutely right. Next up is Flamingo.
It was all strong work, Chris. I just wish it had been a little bit clearer.
Yeah, despite their assurances that things would be quieter in the brewery, there's no such thing as a quiet working brewery.
Just before we get into the Flamingo, the winner on this vote has been some fucking barley wine. So thanks, folks. I mean, thankfully, I believe this one's pretty restrained ABV wise. 8.4. So
it won a great taste award as well, Johnny. There you go.
It's got 2 stars. Not even just 1. I will say, I mean, even before I crack this, it's a bloody amazing barley wine. So if you're a barley wine fan, you've never had the Chiltern Brewery barley wine or any of their beers. They're a great little brewery that nobody really talks about. That's why I have this in the fridge, because they had it in my local bottle shop, and I was like, shit, I need to drink Bodgers. It's called Bodgers. It's not the worst name on my list of beers to drink, but it's not a great one. The worst one is obviously Bishop's Finger from Shepherd Neame. But yeah, it's a great beer, and I'm looking forward to it. Even if I've gone, I went 5, 7, 7.2, now 8.4. But it's going to be fine, lads. Tell us about Flamingo, Chris.
I'd love to. So, Flamingo, as you can tell, a very classic Jess Holt design here. The other thing that I should tell you about Jess is that she looks like her designs. I would say that she probably has even more colors in her hair than this this can does on the label. She's a very vibrant personality, and she's a really, really good illustrator. This is actually a prototype label for a beer that we're going to try that you've also got in your box. We might not have time to try it on the live stream, but the mango IPA that you're going to try later, that Jess had originally designed this label for that beer, and it was decided that at that time, even though we were getting into more colourful designs, that it was like a bit of a departure from our kind of labels, as you can imagine. But this is also really good. Another really good example of Steve having his eye on what's going on and wanting to react to what was happening in the marketplace. So, as many of you will have seen over the past year or so, there are a lot more 3.4% beers in the marketplace for the same reason that I imagine that barley wine you're drinking is labelled at 8.4. I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm just saying there's a reason why that might be the case. New duty rules and regulations came in place recently that meant that people were able to pay less duty for beers that are produced at 3.4% or below. A lot of brewers decided to use that to, if they had beers that were at 3.8, for example, to bring them down slightly, or even some beers that were stronger than that to do lower strength versions of that to benefit from that reduction in duty costs. Steve's preference and my preference as well was to actually develop a new product, a new beer to be able to fit into that essentially emerging category. And because we were really good friends with the guys at Asda, mostly because we can practically see their head office in Leeds from the brewery, we're used to seeing them on a regular basis. To us, they don't seem like a huge supermarket trend. They're those guys from over the road that we know really well. Their beer buyer used to be a brewer, so we get along really well with him. And Steve basically sort of came into. I was already in a meeting with the beer buyer from Asda with a colleague, and Steve, in his usual way, said he was like, "Oh, I'll make sure I'll come to that meeting." And he was doing 300 other things at the same time, but he still managed to come into the meeting halfway through, and he basically came in with a can of Judicious and the can of the Mango IPA. He put them both down on the table in front of the Asda buyer. This is literally how he introduced himself. He came in, he was like, "Hi Ryan, how's it going? So this is what I'm thinking." He put the two cans down in front of him, and he's like, "We're going to do this together at 3.4%. What do you think?" And that was basically the brief. For the beer itself is a hazy pale ale at 3.4% that uses mango. As you'll see in that other beer in your box, the mango IPA, the way we like to use fruit when we do use them in hoppy beers is to complement and to supercharge the flavors that are already in there. So again, you're looking at there is some talus used in this beer, but it's more, I think it's a little bit heavier on the Galaxy, which can have a really nice mango flavor to it when it's used well. The idea behind this beer was just to create something which again was just really vibrant, exciting, and accessible, and for it to be a fun beer at 3.4% that everybody could enjoy, could remain vegan friendly, not have to be too crazy in terms of ABV, and again, just kind of slot neatly into summertime drinking for these kind of fruit forward, more tropical kind of vibes. The cool thing about this beer as well, which I should mention, is that we did a special edition of it for Leeds Pride. I'm not sure if this, some people might say it's already a fairly Pride label. But we knew the guys at Leeds Pride really well, and they were keen to collaborate on a beer that we could then use to donate profits from proceeds generated from beer. So we did a special edition version of that label for selling during Leeds Pride, where we donated 15p from every can to them being able to run the event. And yeah, I think Flamingo, when we developed it, still seemed like it was pretty out there for me, and I thought we were doing something that was a little bit frivolous. But it's just so charming, both as a beer and as a label and as a kind of vibe, that I've just over time, I've really gotten on board with it. And I enjoy it just as much as Judicious. We don't have Flamingo coated glassware for this beer yet, but I suspect that might come at some point in the future.
Good caveat.
You guys think of it?
definitely getting the talus, which is it's a little bit divisive for me, but I can see it. Like the mango flavor is pretty amazing that's going on. So it's actually got mangoes in it for like actual real mangoes.
Yeah. So the way we like to use it, and this is the same way that we use it in the mango IPA as well, is that we've started out just using like puree, and whilst that can deliver a really good flavor and texture, it can overpower some of like the actual hop character and the balance and like that integration that we always try to look for in our beers. So what we do is like we move from just using puree to using like taking a more, I always think it, like a brewer would never admit to this, but I think it's a bit more of a chefy kind of like approach. So we like to use puree, and we also like to use essence because we want the flavor to be a bit more layered.
Yeah.
So you get like a more complete kind of mango flavor instead of just being like sweetness up front and more aroma. You get it a little bit more consistently through the mid palate, and at the back, it just feels like softer and rounder, and it just feels like a bit more complete of an idea, more completely expressed idea than just like chucking mango at it and hoping the beer is going to be okay with it. Which I've had in for, particularly when you get into beers which I really like, heavily fruited, kind of like sour styles. Sometimes the mango, even when you use it in huge quantities, it can be a little bit one note. It can just kind of appear and disappear. And I think the best approach to it is like think about how you want those flavors to come all the way through and last as you're drinking it. And that's the other thing that I really like about this beer is it retains that kind of vibrancy all the way through to the last drop. Like I say, it's fun. It's probably one of the silliest things we do. Like people think of us locally quite as a very traditional brewery in some respects. So as doing something like this, people are like, "What the hell is Kirkstall up to right now?" It's like I'm here with my like Victorian T-shirt and my Flamingo can, and it's like, what's going on? As I keep saying, like the approach is to give people what they want, and Steve's got a really good handle on that.
Jasper said, "Does talus bring some coconut?" Sounds great with mango. I'm definitely getting a bit of coconut, which is for sure the talus. But it's a full on,
maybe a little bit more pronounced in this than it is in Judicious, at least in this particular batch of this beer. I think it's quite a pleasing kind of like I say accent kind of to these kind of like flavors. It always makes me think of pina colada kind of like type stuff.
Definitely,
I think as you guys have educated people with ingredients and stuff like this before, like when you taste things like that, even if it's just from hops, it's because those compounds are the same as you would find in the thing that you are thinking about. I think I caught a little bit of earlier. I think I was having technical difficulties at the time, but you were talking about like that range of things that you can taste and like teaching your brain to pick them up. Having the ability to do that is obviously it's like a skill, that you can train and develop yourself with. But my favorite thing, much as you guys have talked about before on the channel, is just like having those amazing sense memories that transport you somewhere to a time and a place. And that's what this beer does for me. It makes me think that I'm still like traveling somewhere. I'm in India and I'm having like a kind of like lassi sort of like cocktail somewhere on a beach. As I look out on the cold Yorkshire skyline, I could still feel like I might be there.
Do you know, I'm having one of those flavor memories right now with this. So this beer, I was just looking at the tasting notes. So Chiltern Brewery say citrus fruits, strawberries, honeyed malts, and spicy hops, which are all true. But what this is reminding me of is Brad and I, the first time we went up to the Arctic Circle to visit the homebrew scene there in a place called Mosjøen in northern Norway, we went for a fancy meal. I can't remember, maybe it was in a hotel or something. And when they brought out the main course, they brought out Brad doesn't eat anything that flies. And they brought out partridge, and Brad didn't realize, and he nearly vomited when they said. But for pudding, we had brown butter ice cream. And it was
Cloudberries.
with cloudberries, and it was fucking amazing. And honestly, not strawberries, but cloudberries. And that brown butter, when I talk about it in like
Brown cheese. Wasn't it brown cheese?
Sorry,
called...
sorry, not brown butter. Brown cheese ice cream. Sorry.
Yeah,
Ice cream. So it's salty, it's caramelly, it's nutty, and they made an ice cream with it.
Mm.
And yeah, when I talk about it in lagers, we talk about croissant or brioche kind of flavors in lager. It's got this, and I'd imagine this is lagered for a while because you probably have to at 8.4% with a big fermentation, and it just reminds me of that. But yeah, so the first sip took me straight to that dessert in that fancy restaurant in Mojon. And then Brad nearly vomiting at the table.
But I love the cloudberry brown cheese dessert. It was epic. We had so much brown cheese there. It was incredible stuff. Like, not cheesy, like more like you say, more like caramel, buttery, quite just like a robust kind of, but like subtle flavor. I don't know how to sort of say it.
It's like salted dulce de leche or salted Biscoff, but not quite as sweet. It's a fucking amazing ingredient.
Yeah, when I went to the Brew by Numbers, we had Norwegians who worked with us who used to occasionally bring in things like the brown cheese and like the brown butter, and it was just it was a taste sensation.
Yeah,
I just loved it.
Wasn't it like it was like a super condensed boiled cheese, wasn't it? That basically gets all of it's like a condensed milk or something, and it kind of condenses all the sweetness that is in cheese.
I think you boil the whey and then you make cheese with it, maybe. So you sort of stew it to caramelize it, and then you make stuff with it, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's like a stewing thing that has like some kind of what do you call it, like the Maillard reaction, like a caramelization.
There's a pressure thing, there's a caramel thing.
Like making crystal malt, you stew it and then you roast it or ferment it. Cool, right. I'm glad we're all drinking delicious beers. I wish I could try the beers that you're trying and get the stories behind this. I'm getting this weird experience of being somebody in the comments that didn't buy the box, but I'm in the show. But I'm having a wonderful time drinking extraordinarily strong beer. So we're now going to move on to the Q&A section. So we've had lots of great comments and questions. Sorry, lots of great questions coming in that I haven't wanted to interrupt the general flow with, but I'd love to hear all of your questions now, whether it's for Chris and Kirkstall or Chris's beer writing, whether it's for us about the channel or us about the Keep Cask Alive campaign. Please do send them in now and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll crack open the Spokane when people are ready, when we're ready. But we'll probably go on for about 15-20 minutes if Chris is all right with that. So we'll go and try and capture everything. Just before we dig in, two quick things to say. Firstly, you can buy me and Brad's t-shirts right here. We're out of stock of XL, XXL, and possibly small, but if you're medium or large, there should be some left. And also our hats are there. Brad shows you glassware because that's online as well. I'll show you our glassware.
Oh, it's a bit messy right now, but these are our
glasses. They're all available. So there's lots of stuff on there that you can buy and support the channel. Please do join our Discord as well. £2 a month to join that. It's the greatest chat forum in the world. For 15% off all Kirkstall beers, CBC 15 up until the April 20th, and indeed, of course, merchandise. Also,
sign the petition.
Yes, I'm trying to find that. Okay, sign the petition. tinyurl.com/savecask. We are now at 7773. I was hoping to be at 9,000 at this point, so we're actually behind now. We've been ahead for a long time. So please share it with all of your friends, and also I'll put in the.
That reminds me. Can I ask if you guys did the posters that you said you were doing on the most recent podcast? You said you were doing some posters.
I was about to plug that. So if you go to the Google Drive link in the comments coming up, there is a Google Drive that has posters you can print off to put in your local pubs, or just put on your socials. There's the Keep Cask Alive logo here, which you can make your avatar on social. There's a template letter you can send to your MP. There is the press release if you want to send it to local press. I believe we are going to be in the Observer on Sunday, so the first national press that we've got so far, so that's exciting. And what's the other thing that's in there? There's something else there. Oh, and a one-pager that explains it. So if you're struggling to explain what the campaign's about to somebody, it's all in there. So I'm going to put that Google link live when we start answering the questions. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's dig into some deeper questions. Where's the first one? Here we go. For Chris, do you worry about the perception of being found in supermarkets, with some craft beer fans judging those who move into mainstream space?
Yeah, so I do think about that a lot, and it was probably when I started working at Kirkstall, because of my background working for much smaller breweries at that time that weren't interested in working in those spaces. I guess I was a little bit. That was probably one of the hardest parts of my job, was understanding how these light beers would work for the brand like that. And Kirkstall has quite an interesting sort of relationship with the supermarkets it works with. As I mentioned, Asda is like head office is like over the road from us, and Morrison's is obviously extremely local, because it originally started in Bradford, and they're very prevalent in the north of England, and they're people that we've worked with for quite a long time. Like a lot of breweries, Kirkstall became more supermarket focused during the pandemic, and I think that was probably the largest single factor that's affected maybe independently owned breweries thinking around whether to stock or not in supermarkets, because it came down to making your beer as available as possible, because you had it in tank, because you were brewing it, and you wanted to keep your employees employed, you wanted to keep those brew kits working, you wanted to be able to beer, leaning heavily towards small pack, which is how we term cans and bottles. Like, that meant that you had to find the broadest and fastest routes to market, and that consideration about keeping people employed was the main deciding factor in a lot of those things. But as I say, we've also had good friendships with like the people that work there. I completely understand why people might be hesitant in some way about a brewery that wants to deal with supermarkets, because it doesn't go without saying, maybe it's not talked about actually enough, but the way that supermarkets have influenced food and drink culture and food and drink production over the past 30 years has been absolutely gigantic, to the point where it feels like they are determining in a lot of ways what smaller producers get to do. So when I started at Kirkstall, I had that at the front of my mind quite a lot. But what I came to understand is that these are the circumstances in which brewers of a certain size simply have to operate in order to exist. Those same ceilings of duty that were introduced by the beer duty escalator back in 2002 are still very much the determining factors in how breweries grow. So when you are a smaller brewery and you want to shoot through that 5,000 hectoliter ceiling, you don't just want to be slightly above it. You don't want to be 5,100. You want to maximize the amount of production you can have if you are going to be paying that higher level of duty. And people that go through the higher ceiling want to be able to go even further through it. They need to shoot through it like a rocket. They don't just want to land just on top of it. I mean, paying the maximum amount of duty for the amount of volume that they're producing. They want to go as high as possible. When you work for a brewery like Kirkstall and you come to understand the sheer breadth and reach that it has in its heartland, you realize that whilst a lot of our business is cask focused, as I said before, Virtuous is the beer that keeps the lights on, and, you know, Three Swords is the beer that keeps everybody paid and that sort of thing. Dealing with supermarkets is simply the circumstances within which we have to deal with now. They are a force like gravity. We cannot change how important and powerful they have become, but what we can control is how you want to work with them and how you want to make that range of beers work for you. If it offers you an opportunity to develop a new product and see its reach in the marketplace and how people feel about it, much like Flamingo, it can be an amazing opportunity. If we were a brewery that was starting today or 5 years ago, even just on the other side of the pandemic, the supermarkets might not be a target for us at all. But Kirkstall is in many ways, because starting in 2011 in craft beer terms, making almost like a legacy brewery. You know, I'm not saying we feel super old or anything like that, but it does mean that you have to exist and react to the functions of the marketplace sometimes. That was something that it took me a long time to like get my head around. But when I understood that it offered us amazing opportunities to reach people and get the branding in the hands of people, that changed how I thought about can labels. It changed how I thought about how we get people to pick up that can off the market and bring to the brewery. In those boxes that we sent out to you, you'll have got a beer mat and a flyer about our brewery tours and stuff that we do at breweries, and it's got pictures of some different cans, not the cans you got in the box, but a range of different cans that we do. Supermarkets, if used right, offer an amazing opportunity for outreach beyond your heartland if you use it right, and if you make that range of products diverse and inclusive to people. So yeah, it is always a concern, and it's something that you always have to think about and how you want to present yourself. But if it's done right, you can make these big, sometimes feel like malignant forces help the industry overall by presenting a broader range of beers to people and finding out what people want. It wasn't a short answer because there's no possible way to give you a short answer to that question. Well, I hope that covers a lot of the territory that you were asking around.
I think just to add to that, you know, there's obviously a lot of talk about the cost and the pricing and all that kind of stuff, and it's important those conversations are had, but it's very hard to know exactly what breweries are being paid for it. So all I could say without that knowledge to hand is the reasons why supermarkets are so important and so controversial in the UK, and one of the main reasons for that is the beer tie. So, you know, if you're in America and you see, you know, you go to America, Pliny the Elder is in supermarkets in California. You know, there is absolutely zero stigma to being in a whole.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And the reason there's a stigma here and the reason that it's controversial here is A, because supermarkets can sell it significantly cheaper, but B, because the actual open market for small breweries in the UK is severely, severely restricted. So, you know, there's 40,000 pubs in the UK. Only about 20,000 of those even have the possibility of buying the beer that they want to. You then have to factor in the fact, you know, the costs mean they might not want to. They might tie themselves in to contracts and deals and that kind of thing. And what that means is the actual free market, the actual access to market for small breweries is minuscule. So if you want to grow outside of that, you either have to go down that super hype route, like, you know, Verdant, Northern Monk to some extent, although they're in both now, and to get everybody to come to your web shop constantly looking for that fresh new release, or you have to go to supermarkets to get to the volume that you need to get the economies of scale. So, you know, not to defend supermarkets, the real ethical issue is in the structure of the industry, not in the fact that supermarkets are selling good beer. Supermarkets should be fucking selling good beer. It should be good beer should be in every single outlet in the UK. The issue is in the fact that if you want to grow and hit your economies of scale, supermarkets are the only option. And that's a broken system.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wild. Right. Next question. Chris, could you tell us about Dissolution? To me, it seems like the original Kirkstall Brewery beer, what with the links to Kirkstall Abbey and the dissolution of the monasteries.
Yeah, so we don't do a canned version of Dissolution. It's been mooted a few times, and it may be something that comes to pass at some point in the future, just because, and this is like boring kind of industry knowledge, like the stuff to do with being a responsible producer now, and the weight of glass waste versus other kinds of light waste is starting to become a bigger and bigger factor, and also the shrinking category of bottled ale, because so many of those consumers have switched over to cans, or they are staunchly protecting it, but they're kind of like, they are aging consumers. Means that probably a lot of people are going to start moving towards cans more generally. But Dissolution itself absolutely is a very OG Kirkstall beer. As I say, the company was very cask focused when it started in 2011, because that was where the throughput and the route to market was really there for a small growing brewery. Most of the core range that Kirkstall does in cask have names that speak to things which are in the local area. So Three Swords actually refers to this emblem that has always been a part of that local identity. Dissolution naturally refers to what happened to the monasteries in 1539. I'm going to say semi-confidently. But yeah, so the name Dissolution obviously refers to those dissolution of the monasteries. I can talk about Dissolution quite a lot, because it provided one of my absolute career highlights. And that was the first year that I got to work at Leeds International Beer Festival, when it had moved from Leeds Town Hall to Kirkstall Abbey. Kirkstall's always had a big involvement in Leeds International Beer Festival, and the fact that it was coming to the Abbey felt like, in a way, it was coming home and creating this conduit to all this history and all this opportunity to tell that story, which I'm so passionate about. That show not tell stuff, like, felt like it was all coming together. Dissolution is a cask IPA, which is very much part of that reciprocal conversation between us and the United States, in the sense that, a bit like Three Swords, it's got very British sensibilities, but it's got American hops in it. So if you imagine English IPAs being reinvented in the States, we can talk about how Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is, essentially full of ESB with bells on, broadly speaking, that's what we're talking about. Those things then start to inform, like, back and forth. So when Kirkstall wanted to do its own kind of cask IPA, it had obviously a very English, like, malt structure, very clean yeast profile, but an actual dry hopping of, like, American hops in it. Dissolution is one of the most well-loved beers that we make, but it's probably a little bit overlooked now, just because it's not as fashionable as those styles like used to be. But it is brewed all the time, and it is available in bottles as well as in cask. Cask is obviously the superior version of it. But to go back to one of my career highlights, when we got to do Kirkstall Abbey, Leeds International Beer Festival, we the first time that we did it, we set up our bar in the chapter house. The chapter house is the part of the abbey where the monks would meet with the abbot and discuss the issues of the day, if they were allowed to talk, unless they were under vows of silence, etc., etc. But the chapter house was basically the central meeting point for all of the monks. It also has a place of further historical significance, because that's where the agents of the crown of King Henry VIII, came to formally dissolve said monastery. And that is where the abbot at the time, his name was John Ripley, he signed it over to them and allowed it to be dissolved. I'd love to do much more history about this, but to cut these things a little bit shorter, I got to serve Dissolution over the bar in the exact spot where the dissolution of Kirkstall Abbey happened. And I had somebody ask me, why is your beer called Dissolution?
Oh, Christopher.
So you can imagine how it's
like, beer writer.
Like, it's named after this event that happened at this time where you're stood right now, the Abbot John Ripley signed over to the ground. You are stood in the spot where dissolution happened, and now this pint of dissolution is happening to you. And that was one of my favorite things that I've ever been able to do at a beer festival, is to just like do a complete history mindfuck on someone.
I love it. It's why I fucking love historic pubs, and it's why I think it's so important, because you get to have moments like that. Even in the darkest stuff, where I drank a pint of Hofbräu where Hitler stood, founded the Nazi Party. These places. I saw it was a Pellicle article recently where it was like some of our best museums are pubs, and it's absolutely true, because it's not even just a museum. The museum is the building, and you're in it, and you stood where these things happen. You're learning about where these things happen, and you're drinking something similar to what was drunk when those moments happen. Maybe not in the case of Dissolution, but in the case of the Hofbräu Weisse, it's just there's no other way of experiencing history in that way, like there is with beer in pubs.
Somebody, Warm Hug Fermentations has been asking what's happened to Yuri, so I'm just going to show you what Yuri is doing right now. He is still here, but he's very, very tired. Yuri is currently sleeping on the floor in his little bed right now.
He's me and my bodgers.
Yeah. He wants to be present. Yuri's a complete party animal. He always wants to stay up with the lads, party all night, but he is tuck it out.
I got a really quick one, and then I've got a great question from Warm Hug Fermentation. So, can you get some XXL Three Swords t-shirts, please?
Yes. So that XXL size of this version probably is sold out now. But the good news is there's going to be a newer version of the shirt coming very soon. So watch our socials of that. As I say, there's going to be a little bit of a refresh. Doesn't seem right. It's going to be more like an exhumation of OG branding that could be coming to Three Swords soon for Cask, and then we're going to do some supporting branded bits of merchandise. So if you like this, you're going to see a version of this that's more about the beer. Should I say this? Yeah, fine. I basically said to James earlier, I want to do a t-shirt where we've got this printed, but saying Three Swords and Extra Pale Ale on it. That's going to go on the back of the shirt, and then the front of the shirt is going to have this crest from the Abbey that's just going to be positioned on the chest. So that's my idea for the next version of the t-shirt. So that'll be coming in a month or so's time. But for the time being, the sizes available on the website are for the last version of this shirt before we update it. But we're also going to be doing some new versions of the Three Swords cap. So if you can imagine this with just like 3 whacking great swords on it, those will be coming in a few weeks as well, and all kinds of other stuff.
Sweet.
Also, Lowfield, I'm guessing, is a Leeds United fan, based on that name. I've had to learn a lot about Leeds United after I moved back to Leeds as well. I'm not a football person generally. But after the supermarkets thing, that was the other biggest thing I had to learn a lot more about was Leeds United, which I proudly support as my second team. You might be able to see Teresa's got a We All Love Leeds print up here. That's just up in the corner. You can see that there. That's designed by Burley Banksy, who graffitis over the various telephone boxes and electrical cabinets in Leeds. But we're also now working with the Square Ball, which is much more grassroots football, Leeds United football organisation, to do a co-branded beer with them, which will be coming soon. And fittingly, it's called Lowfields Lager, which Lowfields I'm sure will be very interested in. We're going to be promoting that soon. Kirkstall, in addition to all of its other kind of links to the local industry, have got really tight links with like grassroots sports. We sponsor a lot of local sports teams, rugby, football, cricket, because it's a great way to get beer into the hands of people who so desperately need it, regardless of their success of their team. People always need beer.
It's the universal truth, my friend. Right. We've got 3 more questions to tackle, but people want to hear a little bit about Spokane. I've lost. I don't know how to say barley wine. Spokane. Should we quickly crack that we take a second to digest this question here from Warm Hug Fermentations. If you were in a zombie apocalypse, what would be your weapon of choice? I feel like Brad already knows, and we might take some time.
Yeah,
Well, okay, right.
so I've read, and I'm sure Brad probably has as well, the Zombie Apocalypse Survival Guidebook by Max Brooks. Big fan of his work. He's the son of Mel Brooks, interestingly enough. But anyway, yes. So my weapon for the survival of the zombie apocalypse would obviously have to be 3 swords. One for each hand, and then a third one as a backup.
I've watched The Walking Dead and all of the spin-off Walking Dead things, and what else I watched? Sort of 28 Days Later and all the rest of it. I would choose a crossbow, I think, because it's basically a gun, but you can just reload it with bolts again and again. And I also used to think, yeah, Michonne's from The Walking Dead, her original tactic of having 2 zombies on chains, like gimp zombies, where she'd like taken their teeth out, and she chopped their arms off so they couldn't attack her. That was pretty cool because then she could walk through zombies like a zombie, basically. So she was like a sort of shogun kind of person with a samurai sword and 2 sort of drone bot kind of zombies that were kind of fanged. So that was a really cool kind of way of getting around. Obviously, Glenn just got by on his wits from the walk. I'm just got full Walking Dead now. Sorry, Glenn was amazing. He just sort of like had a great brain of just getting out of stuff. And then Daryl was Crossbow Man, who's super cool, like a sort of outback cowboy, sort of Han Solo character of an apocalypse. So yeah.
I'm thinking just
now
old
I feel like
vinyl.
I'm on the podcast with you guys. This is good because like Brad's probably derailed it with
You
the
mentioned the Friday 5 p.m. chat.
Yeah, I like it.
Baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. I missed that as well. Sorry, that is obviously
what's his face?
name? Yeah. Coolest dude in it. Yeah.
Single
other than
syllable.
Darren. Yeah. What is his name? Can't remember. Kill Glenn. Oh,
Negan.
Oh, spoilers.
Negan.
There we go.
Negan.
I keep thinking, because this is called Bodgers, I keep thinking I'd take a badger puppet.
A badger puppet?
Yeah,
Okay.
like Bodger and Badger.
Ah, right. Yeah. Bodger and Badger. I forgot about it. Mashed potato. Yeah.
Yeah. Mashed potato.
Yeah.
Everybody
really
knows it was mashed potato.
Just sort of try and push mashed potato in their chompy mouths.
They're not going to be able to eat you if their mouth's full of mashed potato.
Yeah. It's famously a hard thing to chew.
A jukebox, a la
jukebox.
Shaun of the Dead. Just push them into endless jukeboxes.
Oh yeah. With some Queen playing. Yeah.
With some Queen playing. Yeah, because then you get a good soundtrack when you're doing it. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
That's bad. I mean, I'm worried about the crossbow because the crossbow
is the one, man.
But when if they're close up in large number, you're gonna wish you had a machete or something, aren't you?
That's when Daryl turns to the fighting knives. He gets the 2 fighting knives out,
suddenly.
And he just knives them in straight to the temple or whatever.
May I remind you of the question? What would your weapon, singular of choice, be, Bradley?
What kind of person goes into a zombie apocalypse with zero redundancy?
Comfort break while Brad finished answering this.
Probably a good time to take it.
Queue up the next question.
You've got to have redundancies, Johnny. This is the point of a zombie apocalypse. You can't rely on
Bradley,
a single measure.
Pour your West Coast IPA and tell me about it.
Oh dear. I'm not saying oh dear because of that. I'm just saying oh dear in general.
Just oh dear. Oh dear.
It looks good. People are loving the pours that I'm getting from this Willie Betcher style glass, which I think is fair enough. I think they look pretty good. That's a bit of a big head. Sorry about that, guys.
No, that's perfect, mate. That's what I want to see from any beer. I like this idea. Just a big hill. I'm not even sure you need the cheese. Are they going to chase the cheese? Just a big hill.
What did you say? Big what hill?
Big hill.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like you could just give them a nudge and they're gone. You know.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Just trip them up or
A
something.
bit like actually in 28 Days Later when they have the trolley tower that humans can get up and they can't. It's a pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, good. A good question is what are the? Well, we'll wait for Chris about this. My next question, but so this is what Spokane says on the back. Spokane is a classic West Coast IPA inspired by the Pacific Northwest with a prodigious hop character and a sublime drinkability. So I'm expecting resiny, hoppy West Coastiness.
Yeah, I wish I was drinking that beer. Hey. Right, so we've tackled that one.
Delicious.
Big old question here from Older Slayer. I have another question if you don't mind. In terms of availability of cask, do you think success is more influenced by being readily available or being well known for a good pint? Chris might well have views on this, but I think it's very hard to say because it depends on the price point of the beer, which I know is about as sexy as an answer can be. But if you look at the wild success of, say, Doombar, that's been hugely successful off the fact that it's readily available, off the fact that it basically is the ale version of a shit lager, and that it tastes of very little. It's served, I think it's delivered to the pubs bright. There's no sort of secondary fermentation happening at the pub itself. And that has created success for it. Whereas you could look at something like Timothy Taylor, where, as you'll find out when we do our Timothy Taylor video, they have been militant about their pricing. They have never dropped their pricing, even when it lost them endless accounts. And even framed the letter they sent back to Wetherspoons when Wetherspoons offered them a certain price. They have made an incredible success out of that. And even so, Tim, the CEO, says in the interview, he says how much cash they've got in the bank. I think he said 8 million, didn't he? Like,
it might have been higher.
Yeah. Like, they have made a phenomenal success out of really sticking to their guns on pricing, and as a result of that, have managed to reinvest hugely in what they do. So it's all cold chain. You know, the Timothy Taylor lorries are a thing of beauty in themselves. It should be the Coca-Cola van of the Coca-Cola lorry of the UK. They're beautiful new lorries, all completely climate controlled. And and he even references this in the interview as well. I'm giving so many spoilers for the full video. It's going to be a great fucking video. But he basically said, we asked him, he said, what would the end of cask look like, and what part would Timothy Taylor's play in that if it really got that dire? And he basically said that he would love cask ale as a category to survive, but if cask ale does die, he wants to be the Guinness. He wants Timothy Taylor's landlord to be the one that's left. And they have kind of built their approach in regards to that. It's like relentless on the quality, relentless on that reputation of it in the pub. It's no accident that a Sheen at the Devonshire serves Guinness and the next most popular beer on the bar is Timothy Taylor's. He's seen that synergy relationship, likeness that they have. They found a way of making it success through being expensive and pretty much quality wherever you go, unless they can really fuck it up. So it depends on your price point and where you want that to land in terms of which one's going to be more successful. And obviously one is much harder to do because when you actually have to deliver a stunning pint time after time, whereas if you've paid $2.10 for it in Wetherspoons and you Doombar shit, you'd be like, oh, luck of the draw. £2.10. What am I talking about? It'd be cheaper than that. Chris, I don't know if you had any extra things to add to this question, which I was laying into.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question right, readily available in a lot of pubs are well known for a good pint. Yeah, I think this is really driving into, which you may have already covered when I was out, sorry, but like that key final component of the cask process being the pub itself. And I think readily available is always going to be a key indicator of success. Being known for a good pint is more to do with what happens when it actually gets there. So that's kind of like, this is like the difference between, I guess, like walking into Wetherspoons when there's a real ale festival on, whatever, and then having as much variety as possible within whatever theme, versus going to somewhere like the Templar and it having a reputation forged by quality alone. I think most pubs sit in the middle of that somewhere. I think the success of Cask, it can be, you know, everybody wants to create an iconic brand, like very much like Landlord. What you just said about it being like, you know, if Cask died and that was the last thing left, I think he's probably right. It probably would be Landlord. it would be Landlord versus everybody, you know. And it's a beyond iconic beer. Again, it's one of these kind of like thing that feels like it's just part of the landscape up here. You can walk into a pub, and I think this is what it's about. Like, if you walk into a pub and you feel like, I'm safe, Landlord's on, I'm all right. Like, I know everything's gonna be okay, because even if all these other things,
if the zombies
aren't as
come,
good as I want,
Landlord's on.
Landlord versus 1,000 zombies, Landlord's gonna win every time.
Just slapping them
But
with
yeah,
bar.
it's a complicated question. I don't really even know how to answer it completely, but like, yeah, I think it's a combination of so many things. I think the success of Cask, where I am, is a combination of those things. It's range up to a point, but actually, is a good anecdotal example of what I'm talking about. We have had issues, and I'm definitely not trying to sound arrogant here, because if you know me, that's not what I'm like at all. But we have had issues in the past where pubs have stopped selling Three Swords because when it's on, their other beers stop selling. Because when people have one, that's what they want to stick to all the time. That speaks to what I've said before about giving people what they want and delivering it, just delivering the experience that they want from pale hoppy Cask. But it also actually tells you quite a lot about the way pubs work now, and about why Cask faces hardship. And what you were talking about with the beer tie earlier, if said venue does not have control over what it's able to serve, then it might be detrimental to the range of beers that are available, particularly and especially the Cask lines. If venues do have a choice of what they are able to have pouring, they are able to curate a range that is complementary and can help sell each other. This is one of the reasons why, like I said earlier, keg stouts have become like a much bigger thing this year, because people want to be able to accommodate for this lucrative Guinness drinker market. We went through a bit of like soul searching about whether we should serve Guinness in Kirkstall pubs, and we came to the same conclusion that we came to about Virtuous, essentially, where it's like, it's for pubs to survive and for them to be successful, which means that the cask is going to sell faster and that the cask is going to taste better. You have to accommodate for that one person in the group that only wants to be able to drink the thing that they only want to drink. If you put Guinness on your pub, and this is the power of Guinness and the power of, you know, complementary and supplementary brands like Ant's Fashion Hop Days, like London Black, is like, if you can deliver that experience to people, that means you've got that whole group of 8 people drinking at the bar. If you aren't able to satisfy that one person who has a very specific need, those people might have to go somewhere else. So actually, the success of cask in a lot of ways is tied to the success of all the other brands on the bar, because not everyone who goes into the bar is going to be drinking cask. You actually do have to think about what the entire group wants. If you can satisfy all of those requirements, all of your cask is going to turn over faster. It's not just about the cask alone. It's about the whole range of what you're doing beyond cask. That's, I think, is a critical component, which is understood by larger pub companies up to a point, but they understand it in terms of units. Whereas like brewers who are also pub owners, like us, like you guys covered really well with Shepherd Neame as well, they understand what people want to be able to get in its entirety, and that if you deliver that right, cask is going to get served faster and it's going to taste better as a result. Cask's fortunes are inextricably tied to pubs and how pubs should work. Pubs should be able to accommodate everyone. Specialization is fantastic for specialized drinkers, but the better job you can do of satisfying everyone, the better job you will do of satisfying the specialized drinker, is my belief.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that we've all been probably all been at some point a little example of that idea of, you know, you satisfy one and everyone stays. As cask, as you know, craft beer lovers and evangelists, you know, it's a really powerful thing that, you know, could really change the fortunes for cask. I said we'd be around for 20 minutes. It's been 40. So I've just got one last thing that I want to address. It's a very simple question, which hopefully we can answer and then go out with this in mind. But it's from Thumbsprain, just says, why are you talking nonsense? Which I presume was the weapons against the zombie apocalypse, but it could have been any of this. Do you agree that cask ale is currently undervalued and underpriced in pubs? And I don't think there's a brewer or beer geek in the world that doesn't think that. And that's what this UNESCO campaign is really partly trying to tackle, because at the end of the day, the way that we make cask ale successful long term is by offering the breweries the margins that they need to really commit to it and diversify it and brew it to the best of their abilities, and get, you know, work with the companies that can offer them the right price points.
Yeah, because ultimately you want to be able to steer cask to being at the point where it becomes the determining factor, in the same way that Guinness or lager or Prosecco can be. Is like, well, I only want to go there if they've got really good cask. You want that person to have the same buying power, as it were, as the Guinness drinker does and as the other people do. If you get to the point where it's like the quality of cask is what they're willing to pay for, and they become the determining factor when the whole group gets to go to a pub, that's when cask can truly have a resurgence. I think like you have to be able to get that buying power into those people's hands. Like we saw this kind of phenomenon happen in real time during the pandemic, when breweries who maybe weren't that fussed about their online shop or weren't that fussed about small pack beer suddenly would do anything in order to be able to get people to have their beers available and be able to get them to their homes. That was a shift in buying power from retailers, specifically pub owners, to people on their phones with their phones in their hands. How do you get beer to those people? It changed everything, and it's continued to change everything. So we need that kind of phenomenon needs to happen to cask in order for it to like truly have a big cultural shift. For all the reasons we've talked about, I don't need to list them again. Should I talk about Spokane, by the way, before we wrap up?
Well, sorry, Brad did a little
did a bad job. Very bad job.
Yeah. Give us the lowdown. We'll use it for the cheers.
So Spokane, as it's described on the label, it's got very classic West Coast influences. Perhaps maybe more on the paler side than people might be used to seeing from like West Coast IPAs. Maybe you're more used to seeing like more kind of amber colored ones, but this one really does like take its roots from like the Pacific Northwest, hence the name Spokane. And the hop bill, which is like adjusted over time, and it's become much more like Citra and Simcoe focused now, I think is very reflective of the kind of like best in class, truly pale West Coast IPAs. The ones that are maybe you might not necessarily associate them with Washington State. Like a lot of the ones that people like think of are things like Blind Pig and Blind, where they're actually a lot paler than you realize. Like they're really like geared towards like crispness and drinkability, not necessarily lighter malt body, but what I call faster malt body, where it's like nothing is getting in the way of this beer doing the best thing it can do, and that is just being a delivery system for hop aroma, hop flavor, hop bitterness. Spokane's gone through various versions over the years, like I say, but it's one of those beers which we have a huge amount of heartfelt appreciation of. It's not available all the time, and I think the future for it is actually going to be in 330ml cans, potentially more in the kind of 5.5 range than 6% range. That's just because of the way the UK market is at the moment. But I think it still stands out alongside Virtuous as being like a distinctly different beer. My feeling was that either Spokane needs to come down in ABV slightly, or it needs to go up. I would actually quite enjoy seeing it more in the 7.4 kind of like bracket to see what that was like. But then we realized that that's just something that's available to us brewing on our pilot kit as a special release. So we've rebrewed a beer which Stu Ross, formerly of Magic Rock, who worked for us for several years, called Canal Chase, which is a collaboration with a Canadian brewery called Smuggler's Trail. It's based upon a beer recipe of theirs that's called Canoe Chase, and because we are in the part of the world where we are so dominated by waterways, we called it Canal Chase. When Stu was sent the recipe by the brewer at Smuggler's Trail, he looked at it and he was like, "That's pretty close to Cannonball. Yeah, I reckon I can do that." But it was essentially Stu Ross getting to brew Cannonball how he would have liked to, without any kind of restrictions. And that was one of the fastest selling batches of keg beer we've ever had, purely for the reason that I was allowed to directly quote Stu from saying, "I think this is the best IPA that I've ever brewed, Stu Ross." And that name carries a lot of weight in West Yorkshire.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah. If you're around
Like
here 10 years ago, that's what you want.
Look out for those time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be keg only again, and it won't last long.
I look forward to tasting that, and I also look forward to tasting Spokane tomorrow when my beer finally arrives. That will be my Friday beer of choice. Maybe if we record the podcast late enough, I'll drink it as we record Friday 5 p.m. tomorrow.
Fingers crossed.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We don't get to catch up enough, and so it's really nice to have 2.5 hours to utterly geek out about beer, and to have some great questions come in around that. And I can't thank you enough for Kirkstall's support, not just in the video that we've made, in the video that will be coming out, and also in the live show that we've done here, and the fact that you screened the video, but in everything that you're doing, Kirkstall is doing for the heritage and the future of craft beer. I think that we're very, very lucky to have a brewery like Kirkstall, and I think I've been looking around the beer industry for a long time for a brewery that cared about both the heritage and the future of craft beer and holistically. And I think that Kirkstall are probably the best example we have of that. So yeah, please keep doing the work that you're doing at Kirkstall, and I hope that we can come up to the great exhibition and all the other stuff that you do and keep covering it.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. Yeah. I just want to take the time to say as well that I'm exceptionally proud of both of you, because I've known you for the longest time, and I think this series, even more so than the first series, has like really put your strengths like in focus. And I'm not talking about myself here, but you, even more so than the first series, you found some really great voices to have on camera to represent what is great, not just about cask, but just about the whole bit like beer culture. And because I've known you guys for so long, like it was so heartwarming to see all of that come to fruition, with all the twists and turns that came along the way, the roller coaster of the final episode, like generally had me on the edge of my seat. I'm really proud to see you guys getting so well supported by all of your supporters, by all of your sponsors, and long may this continue, because I think you are now really getting into your best years of what you do. And I'm so glad that all of us who started out just drinking in random pubs and trying to hang out and find cool beers together have got to a position where we can genuinely affect change in the ways that we want to. I think it's an amazing thing.
Chris, that means a lot. It's been an absolutely wild ride the last year, and it's wonderful to hear you say that. I really do appreciate that. Oh, Brad doesn't have his MacBook.
It's not working today. I just told Chris, but
he only does that outcome the heart. Yeah, I mean, you I'll take every bit of credit you're giving us, but like you say, we found some great fucking voices. You know, still the Eyes and Glass episode, I still laugh when I think about it, just how good that story came together, and it has no right to be that interesting. And I think that's a testament both to the, you know, to Brent and to Sarah, that were such good sports with it, but also to beer itself and the stories that it has. And you know, to you and to Steve and everybody else, Andy Leman as well at Timothy, was just a man that hated being on front of camera and hated every fucking second of it, but was just so charming when he was. So I'm sure he's going to be wheeled out more frequently from now on, and he'll blame us. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us for this and for all the support. Please, if you haven't signed that petition, we're now at 786. So we've had 123 sign-ups while we've been live, which is great news. And hopefully we'll hit 10,000 maybe by the end of the weekend. Do watch out for us in the Observer this weekend. Do please use your 15% discount at Kirkstall. And if you want the T-shirts that Brad and I are wearing, or indeed the hats that we're wearing, you can buy that right here from the wonderful Malt Miller, our great podcast sponsors, good friends, and of course merchandise holders. Otherwise, yeah, we've got a week off next week because it's my birthday, and then the week after that, we're back with our feature on Dissolution Brewery, which is very, very exciting. And completely different to what we've been releasing of late. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll start releasing all of the unedited full episodes from Kirkstall, Timothy Taylor, Shepherd Neame. Some really exciting stuff to come about the heritage of British brewing. So yeah, thanks so much for all the comments, all of the support that we've had all of tonight. We love you all so much for everything that you do, and we will see you tomorrow for a podcast in which we break this down, and certainly in my case deal with the existential crisis that comes with 2 barley wines. Yeah, love and beer, everybody.
Godspeed, Johnny.